Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing exceptionally well. How are you?
Doing great, doing great. We're going out on stream number 2, so just a heads up on that. But really looking forward to the show. I was looking over your website, and it seemed right online with what we've been talking about here on the show.
Oh man, that's definitely going to be the thing. We should be able to do some universal thinking tonight.
Yes, definitely, definitely. How's everything down where you are?
Oh man, here in Costa Rica, everything is exceptionally well. I mean, of course, the weather's beautiful, and there's a lot of fruit, a lot of prosperity, and of course, we're going into springtime, so we're really feeling that energy.
Yeah,
excellent.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Oh
We
yeah,
seem to be
to see things come into bloom.
We seem to be skipping over spring here and just going straight to summer.
And
Yeah, even down at the beach here, we're getting a lot of hot weather, and it's definitely drying up a lot of things more than normal. But then that also mean a longer rainy season, though. That's kind of how, even though there's a little bit of change in the world weather, it kind of compensates here. So it is a little bit dry, but it's still beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to shoot you a link to the guest clock. We skipped the 17-minute break, but it's got a little countdown clock there, so you can kind of gauge the conversation.
Okay. I see that there.
Genetically modified foods and thousands of
Got 40 seconds.
are polluting our world and stripping your rights.
All right, this is an awesome time. Like, we're going to get really amped up here, at the train. So once it starts running.
Let's do it.
let's do it. Yes, definitely.
Products to enhance your
We love DMT talk. Our listeners love it too. So we can go to town definitely on that.
Oh yeah,
The
there's a
connection
lot
to
of
the
stuff
third
that-
eye.
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
All right. Well, we're warmed up then. All engines look ready to go. to
All
me.
engines go.
and will never sell your information to anyone for any reason.
I think you'll like our intro too.
Extreme muscle building and nutrition.
I like
the
the
intro.
whole
The
thing.
intro already played.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Shoot.
yeah.
I missed it.
Oh, we're back. We're back.
Inclination of equator to pole 24.9363 degrees.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. One of our longtime listeners, who goes by the chat name This False Reality, recommended this guest that we're about to bring on. And looking at his website, I'm so glad that he did, because it's really refreshing to see other people out there who understand the Third Eye, 2012 Ascension, and DMT, and all of the topics that we've covered here on Truth Frequency, and all the way from resistance2010.com. We welcome Seven to the show. Seven, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's really beautiful to be on. And I just wanted to say to everyone, wholeness and balanced vibration is just a term that we use. Actually, I'm getting a little reverb here, so I might have to put my speakers set down and just talk.
Okay, no problem at all. You're sounding fine on our end. No echoing or anything coming through this way.
Okay, well, I'm just getting a little bit back here, so I'm going to have to just figure it out really quick.
Okay, not a problem.
Well, just to segue into this segment, though, the reason why we talk about religion so much is because religion is put there on purpose to keep you from learning what we're about to learn.
Right. And I'm coming to the realization lately that I think they don't really need religion that much. They're not pushing it as much as they used to. There's a good percentage of the population that's falling for it. There's a good percentage of the population that's following it. But back then, they didn't have the technology and capability to see everything you're doing at all times. So they wanted to create this illusion that there's this God up there, which like I said before, I do believe that there's a God, but not the God that they talk about, but that he's watching everything and he's judging you, and he can see you when you sleep, and he knows when you're awake, and he knows when you've been good or bad, and even knows when you masturbate. Like that. But now they have the technology to watch you anywhere you are. With satellites, they know exactly what we're saying here on the show. They hear all of our communications through our cell phones. They can turn on the cell phones. I don't even think they need it anymore. The all-seeing eye has been electrified, or is electrical now, and
They are God.
that's what they
just
want to
the
be.
new
Yeah,
God.
yeah, that's what they aspire to be.
And that intimidation is there simply to keep a lid on your third eye.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
to keep you so in fear you can't grow.
Not only fear, but you have pharmaceuticals, you have fluoride in the water, you've got all kinds of chemicals bombarding your pineal. And once you awaken to that, then you start to see the world differently. We've had many different guests, Rick Strassman, Edie Frexka, Joe Rogan, and the producer of DMT, The Spirit Molecule, whose name eludes me right off the top of my head. But they've all explained why DMT is so important and created by the pineal. Well, that's a theory so far, according to some of these people. But I think that there's an agenda there to kind of cover that truth up as well. But there's definitely something to it. But let's go back over to Seven. And Seven, before we jump into it, tell us a little bit about the Resistance 2010 website and some of the work that you're doing there.
Okay. The Resistance 2010 website was formed about 5 years ago after I authored the book, The Code of the Matrix, which was after a major, just a vivid awakening where I went into a higher state of consciousness, and then I came back into the body with the information that I had received from the plane that I went into. And after the Code of the Matrix was written, once putting it out into the internet, of course, it received a very big review and just teaching people how to really look into the reality from multiple angles. And the website was formed kind of in conjunction with the book, and then it began to grow from there. I mean, I remember we were at 400 members at a certain point. And then now we're about 5,000 members. But what the Resistance site is really what we call the University of the World. You can also get to it at astroquest.com. And what we do is we've just taken the cream of the information because there's a lot of stuff out there, and we really just want to get into things that are applicable from whatever level that you're coming from. And we want to get to the conclusion of it. And we've used etymology as a crutch for that. And we have a lot of people in the network, so we can say we have 10,000 eyes. So we have different types of adepts that have gone into things and come back and reported on what they experienced. And so that allowed us to develop a universal system. And of course, we do subscribe to many of the non-binding elements, such as the ayahuasca and definitely the DMT. And even going into those fields and getting familiar with what's there and starting to understand how to bring those things back into this reality.
Now, is Costa Rica a pretty heavy ayahuasca using country, or is that the surrounding countries?
Well, really, it's Peru. Costa Rica is just now seeing a wave of ayahuasca coming in and different shamans coming in and sharing their experience. So really where Costa Rica is positioned is it really got colonized pretty heavy. So there's kind of a difference in Costa Rica versus the Latin countries. Now, of course, it's extremely exotic and extremely preserved. We're only seeing now an influx of people within the last 10 years, but normally Costa Rica has stayed really pristine. And so the energy here has still been somewhat suppressed, but of course it appears definitely to be the center of a major vortex. So we're going to see a lot of energy coming from the center of America in order to rejuvenate what's going on in the rest of the Americas.
Nice. And you also host Esoteric Radio, correct? Where can people tune into that?
They can actually tune into that at www.esotericradio.com, and they'll get to our Blog Talk Radio, and we have quite a few different radios in the archive. But what's mainly there is, we went through this whole process, and I always speak in the collective when I say we. I tend to know that all of us are pushing each other in different ways, and we've all arrived for this perfect time. And so even though a lot of stuff was done on an individual level, there's been a lot of external and seen and unseen assistance in getting all this together. But what we really have going on the site is with Esoteric Radio is we have probably about 2 years of my real-time documentary of going through spiritual change, or what we call the occultation, which is when you go through the wheel or you put on the wheel of the zodiac and you actually begin to run the gauntlet like Perseus, and you see what exactly is out here, and you're getting the real experience because it's more important to you to find out what's going on than it is to have that happen for just everyone else. You become more dependent on yourself and then starting to cycle your own energy rather than becoming very vampiric and looking for energy from somewhere else.
I really admire that because that's what we try to do as well. If you go through our archives, you'll definitely see a huge change where we started from the 5 Cents Reality news and information to, yes, exactly, mad as hell, going to a place of contentment now because we realize who we are and where we come from. And I think that's what's important for everybody to realize.
Well, when we realize we don't have to be like everybody else anymore because
Right.
we know who we are now. And that's,
right.
it's
and,
so
and,
free.
And it's so important for people to see that in real time, like the exact process. I mean, just what technology has done is allowed us to archive that so someone can say, well, I like these people. I'm going to start from their first show. And if they can hang in there long enough, what they'll do is they'll see the entire transformation. They just have to be aware of the timestamps. And they'll be allowed to see us dig through the information, not have anyone giving us the answers and any secret books that have never been published, et cetera, and then us just using the universe and what the universe is telling us in order to determine what's really going on here. So finally, now that many of the more hidden codices, which we'll definitely talk about during this call, have been basically brought out into the public, we see that much of our psychic information has been exact about what's going on with the language, what's going on with the religions. We just have to get to a point where, of course, we're ready to not listen to the overall frequency or the massive frequency and ready to tune into something higher or what I say sometimes lower. We've seen many people have making the choice to go into lower frequencies to deal with things that they have left in previous cycles that are still running.
Yes.
And so there is an ascension and descension in this whole thing, which is also how you get grand things from the top and learn how to distribute those into the environment below or mineralize it. So we're getting an entirely different position here in the universe in a way to act in this whole universal thing, and it's just being presented to us now. Of course, there's a grand amount of stuff that we can talk about as far as who the blame is on what held this whole process up. But I think that we could just do just as much and spend much more energy into talking about what has come out of all of this, all of the foolishness that we've now discovered, or the awakening as it's coming across the entire world. And then understanding how to utilize our abilities and utilize our networking in order to fully manifest what we want, because we have certain individuals that are able to do certain things. I always say it's similar to Voltron, like the head cannot go anywhere without the feet, and if they want to grab something, they need the hand. So it's really not like one person is a head, and that's why I always say we don't use like the pyramid diagram to who's on top and who's the most powerful, who knows the most, et cetera. We use a circle. So we understand that everyone is cycling that energy, and it's only going to benefit us all to keep cycling this energy and keep sharing this and awakening and quickening each other, because we're making something happen that is going to happen anyway, and we're just guiding it more, as Dan Winter says, steering the tornado.
Yeah, I think we're basically taking a situation that's going to occur anyway, things are going to fall apart anyway, and we're easing the transition into a new world order, I guess you could say. I mean, a new kind of society where we understand each other a lot better and are more tolerant of each other. And it's not just about tolerance. It's about understanding and embracing each other.
Yeah, it's really more like even exposure. We always look at it from a level of a shell breaking off. Earth, of course, is a bubble, and it's inside of a very large ocean. And that bubble is also a fractal of a bubble that we build around ourselves against external influence. Of course, we've basically ranked the ETs now as only being reptilian and now pretty much put them in a bad boat. But I think if we really look closely as diverse beings, there's many things that we're experiencing in the reality from other inhabitants, other humans that really are humans doing it to humans, more so than blaming other species. Because when you really see this from the Kether, you really see this from the high levels, what you see is it does connect all the way down. So if there is an extraterrestrial up there, it has a phi correspondence. So we can find that extraterrestrial in our physical environment. It'll more than likely be in our ocean. So it's all about understanding, of course, where we are, which, of course, when you have that third eye, it opens up a lot of things unless you see through that 528 hertz or cornucopic field or convex pyramid in order to mesh over the other part of the reality or what's in between the spaces to allow you to see what's there. And then, I mean, of course, you're coming into total realization through multiple levels. This, of course, is not everyone's experience. However, I've noticed that we've definitely mapped out the multiple stages to the jump gate, as I call it. But the reality is the animal body kicks in generally first and begins to manifest things and to project things that the person generally can't get through as a sticky field in order for them to see the actual fields of pure energy. Of course, many people are concerned about much of what's taking place in the environment, and so that's taking its own toll. But it's also, every time if we could see the entire thing, then we would see just as one thing is moving on one end, there's an exact opposite on the binary universe. I just know now we have to learn how to triangulate from the level of when you're trying to find something. Many people talk about the twin flame, things of this nature, but when you're trying to really find something, they already showed on Earth that you could triangulate something to find out where it is. And so once we get more familiar with understanding what our oversoul is and why there's some of us that look alike, why there's some of us on this same mission, seems like we're getting these same messages. When we understand etymology and the secrets within the words, as they say, the summoning or the spelling, the cursing, when we understand this type of sigil work, then it uncovers for us or unlocks for us an entire chasm of misconceptions that have been short-circuiting the corpus callosum in the brain. The reality is also in a dualistic world, as our brain shows the duality. In the center, there's the bridge, which they have many symbols for the bridge. Many movies like the last Mimsy show the bridge you must cross. But this is the corpus callosum must fire up, and as they call the enlightening itself, or as you see with the Last Airbender, where he has the arrow and it's lighting up in the center of his head, getting those neurons in there back in shape, because a lot of the dyes and a lot of the lies from what's put in the hair, shampoos and things, attempt to burn out that sector. Understanding when we're also in these altered state of consciousness, because many people are now experiencing the altered state of consciousness, and it's almost like they don't know what to do. The mind is a video game. It's literally where, of course, you could pull anything up. But the first thing is to work on the vehicles. And this is what I talked about, is the brute force way to get into higher frequencies that will shake off shells. Like, there's many people that come and talk about the scientific part of this, some talk about the spiritual part of this, but we have to mix it all together. We have to mix it together from a really, really deep level.
Absolutely.
It's, of course, spiritual energies that form around a person and that attached to a person, and they just term it as a shell. But being able to vibrate in the high frequencies to break those things off is what we're talking about.
Right. You see it a lot with mind control subjects. They have a personality on top of another personality, on top of another personality, on top of another personality. And it's basically just taking Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud's idea of the psyche, the shadow self, the animus, and expounding on that 100-fold. But you see it with everybody. Everybody has their shadow self, then their animus, and then you finally get to the core of who you are. And when you do that, then you see all the other personalities that you've loaded onto yourself over the years.
Isn't that necessary to a certain extent, though?
Absolutely.
Because, when I go out and do business, my regular day job business, I can't talk about the stuff that I talk about here. I can't be my true self because I would freak a lot of people out. So is it healthy? Is it not healthy to have those dual personalities?
Well, those personalities, they're not even dual. It's more than dual. Of course, we know that these personalities have already existed just as the emanations within the sky. I believe that the gig is really up. The light emissions from the stars do send a program into the reality that is projected onto the being that has a star that corresponds to that system. Of course, when a human is born, the star appears first, and then they're influenced by the larger stars that are in their system, and that's, of course, called the zodiac. So from that level, there's all sorts of influences and characters or frequencies that the person can alter into
archetypes,
to fit the particular frequency that they have entered, whether it's work, so they have to go into work frequency, etc. I guess what's happening now is that we're now having a reference point for even higher frequencies. I think the other day there was a dragonfly that flew in the window, and I actually thought that he was dead when I saw him. And I put my finger there to kind of just pick him up, and he seemed to have a little bit of life in him, and so I thought. But when I start holding it on my finger, it started to vibrate. A vibration that was so high that you wouldn't generally see a vibration like that on a human being, but this is just a dragonfly. So I think what's happening here for a lot of us is we're starting to realize that there's a higher frequency that we're supposed to be on. I call this activated, when the body actually turns on and it doesn't shut off. And this kind of energy is what's being tested and even demanded for humans to start coming in familiarity with and start learning how to use. Basically, can you operate in the DMT state of consciousness? Can you operate in the ayahuasca, the clean ayahuasca, when you've purified yourself and so you're not purging anymore? Can you operate in that state? And I think that's really what you're talking about when you talk about activated humans or superhumans, because many people have had a spiritual experience and it's been intermittent. And some people have gifts that are very, they may be light, but we're talking about individuals who throw waves of energy across rooms and understand how to build energies into areas. That's what we're talking about now. And those people are already here.
I agree.
That's the reason why I do ayahuasca and DMT, is to better myself in operating under that state, because I feel like once you leave the body, that's what the key is, to maintain your consciousness and maintain your awareness and be able to navigate the afterlife rather than being sucked back into some kind of cycle.
Exactly. I mean, just to go out there and to not master anything would be just about the same as staying here. I believe that the big mystery that's been going on is how to traverse that plane. I'm sure that it was in the hands of many individuals to get in there naturally, and then I'm sure that many have controlled the lucid plane. But as we see that there's more fields, it's almost like an elevator where you could choose to stop off on a certain floor in a particular place. And we have all these different fields out there, so what we're invited to do is kind of map it out. And that's also, of course, helping us to expand our entire field as fish beings, or beings that correspond to fish as the soul corresponds to fish. If you put it in a larger ocean, then it gets larger. Of course, when we expand our mind into these different states of consciousness, they get larger. And it gets a lot of you of course know, when you get past a certain point, none of the programming, darker energies, and different things that people have as their phobias coming to affect them even come into play. You're just, after a while, you begin to stop manifesting and simply take in pure energy and then begin to work with that energy here in this environment, which is what they call the ladder actually connecting. And that's another thing really about the grounding for many of the individuals that have gone off into these higher states of consciousness and have yet to be seen again, meaning that they are here physically with us, but we can't seem to get them to come and do anything like on ground level anymore. And that's, of course, a limitation of their energy, because the ground, or our planet, our Earth, is Kundalini, and all of the phobias and problems that one thinks they were going to be dealing with in higher states of consciousness or whatever are taken care of by Kundalini. Like, there's no one that can survive a dance with Kundalini if they're attempting to battle Kundalini. It's the humbling of the ego. So I believe that these energies have always been present for us, but there's a major part of the Western world right now, because many of the Eastern souls have reincarnated into the Western world, because as they say, even in their highest teachings, that there is a really high chance that a Buddha or someone who has attained that state is going to incarnate or reincarnate into a lower world next. Because now they have to come down the tree with all of these gifts and things and distribute them. I guess that was maybe the original story of the Santa Claus. So, except for, all of what's been put on it now. This is high time for humanity, as to really, really start listening to what's going on, to start working with their bodies. Just as any car, start cleansing the body. You don't run any car without cleansing the filters. Start working with those filters and getting them harmonic again to their planetary frequency, utilizing the tones and frequencies that have been available. Like, there's even now a torrent that's up on the Pirate Bay, and it's the NASA Voyager tracks in FLAC, which are basically when they send the satellite out there, they have a microphone feed, and it's just what it picks up. And it's just amazing when you can begin to utilize your projection techniques in these kind of fields to see how free the space is. So this is what we're talking about. the thing is once again, the individuals who started to experiment with that, even using mathematical equations to create shapes that they can project themselves into, have to work on getting that back into the reality and applying it into the reality. That is now the challenge that is up to play. That picture of water being dumped out, water has always been a symbol of life. Earth, all the mathematics that correspond with Earth are symbols of water. So it's showing us that for us, what may be a fearful deluge is actually a cleansing. And so if we getting rid of a lot of these phobias and the fear-mongering of things that haven't even happened and still showing themselves not to happen while they're burning up our energy, we could just throw those out the window and get on with this thing.
I've looked at it like that too, as a cleansing rather than catastrophe, for lack of a better term. But one of the things that I struggle with, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners do as well, maybe you can shed some light on this, is this 3D world, which is full of negative energy, and it's constantly sucking you back into it, constantly making you feel like it's real, constantly making you entertain that negative energy. Any advice for that?
Definitely. Really, a person can only be subject to things that are on their frequency. Like, we've been able to prove this from multiple levels. Even in the DMT, if you notice, you smile, everything looks good. When you feel scared, everything looks scary. So the reality reacts to how we think. I think people explain that enough, but let's get a little bit deeper into that. Let me just take a break here, but just the reality of this is that I just want to say perfectly what I have to say about this, because people really, really need to hear this message about how to get out of the lower world. Because there is a lower world here. There is lower frequencies and things that are very dangerous for the human soul. So how to get out of that? What's happening is that with the person's
well, why don't
personal...
I don't mean to cut you off. Why don't you do this? Hold for 20 seconds. Let's go back to the Oracle stream. Once we're on there, we'll take it away from there.
Okay.
Resistance2010.com is the website, and during the break we were discussing how to get out of this negative energy in the three-dimensional world, which seems to suck you back into it no matter what. And Seven was about to take us away on that, so please do so.
Okay, this is, in a major way, there's a different story for the male, there's a different story for the female, so we'll start with the female first. The reality is that the way that we cycle energy in our body, the energy that we're calling Kundalini, has a lot to do with our mental, physical, and spiritual state. So it judges us internally. So whatever a person externally judging you is not what you should be concerned about. It's an internal judgment going on between us and the earth. And the earth has the key to the energy, because that's, of course, why it's indicated as the high priestess. So being able to communicate with earth and not be a destroyer of earth is, of course, the key. So people want to know exactly where is the connection with their monetary currency, which, of course, is named the same thing. It's a current. Kundalini, the current that's in their body. Where is all of this connected and where is all this related? What happens with the person is how they care about especially the opposite sex determines a lot about how their energy moves through their body. So with the female, if she's constantly seeing, what I say is not even a sign of the masculine. Like, some people think that the Pope and the Vatican is ultimate solar. No, that's not solar. They've stole the idea of solar, but that's not solar. So we have to be very careful when we say, well, that's the masculine energy destroying the world because it's the Pope and all those men. No, that's not masculine energy. That's Jesuit energy. It can be classified as something specific. So what I would say is that with woman and how she actually looks at man, she has to understand it from a more vast level, from seeding to abundance, things of this nature in her mind when she thinks about the masculine. For the male, and then we're going to keep getting deeper and deeper into this, for the male, it's definitely how he looks at the woman and how he manifests this in his life is when he's with a woman personally. If you look at the Montauk Chai techniques, the man is really not supposed to ejaculate. He can take himself into ultimate states of orgasm by actually saving that semen. And then once it gets high enough into the Dantian chakra, he actually bursts the homunculus, which is the secret of the golden lotus. It's an inception rather than a conception. So this is knowledge that was really known back in the days, and many people were able to prosper way beyond this universe with this knowledge. But it's important to understand how we're made in counterbalance to one another in order to cycle this Kundalini energy. And when you can raise your energy out of your root chakra into the higher chakras, it automatically equals on the physical plane more currency, more current. And every form of current on this dimension, food, all of these different things you will experience. Money, of course, is the real alchemy. It is the dirt into gold. It's taking something of no value and getting the thing of highest value. Gold. You can buy gold with money. But the alchemical method can be used on many different things. It's once you discover it, you can overlay it onto other things. And really a word also on DMT. DMT was known about, of course, in the ancient times under the acacia, but as the cassia, which are the same words, especially on an etymological level. And if you understand Queen Cassia and Cephas, Ethiopia, the real stone.
Well, and that was the burning bush for people that don't know, the burning bush in Christianity.
Exactly. And then even now we're tapping into even deeper information, like what the Ark of the Covenant is, of course, is a small wormhole. But it's an external one. Woman contains a wormhole within her, meaning she contains a 0-point field that brings life into the spark itself. And we're able to map this out now. So it's really about us understanding all of this stuff now because we kind of have to. And I think that's where these awakening periods go, because even what you see with the pineal gland, I don't know if you got the feeling, but I definitely got the feeling when I went into my first DMT trip. I had seen those beings or that feeling or that essence 3 weeks before that. They knew that I was actually coming. And this is where I started to become more, or what I call ultra aware of the other entities that we're interwoven with through biorhythm. It's not something that we can sever. Notice how Saturn, and we may be skipping around just a little bit here, but it's all relative, but Saturn carries the scythe in his hand because the actual religion comes from the Scythians. What is the scythe for? It's to cut an umbilical cord. But it can only do that through thought, meaning it's never really cut. But through thought, one can think that they're disconnected from the earth. And this is, of course, the major cult that is functioning within the entire world right now, of course, which is the Saturnalian cult, right, and all the different titles that it goes under. It's been, of course, a major, major growth period for us, even through that, because once you can leap that bound, when you can go past that field or work that hypercube and even make it beyond that, the treasures are even more glorious. I think this is the idea that we have to embrace now, rather than taking in so much of the negative flack that is being caused by the negative side of the dimension. And us understanding how negativity is an illusion itself, where you can't really pull negative $5 out of the bank. Now, can you? So negative doesn't really exist. It has a position, and we give it power to have that position. And it has worked for us in many cases. And sometimes getting deep in the dream, there's another thing that I've noticed is how many levels a person can be, even though you may be seeing them on the physical reality, but how many levels they are in the dream, as if they've already been on an inception. The reality with many of these people is that when you really, really go into their, what I call the framework, what kind of program they're under, because we've been sitting through, as especially Americans, an entire wave of programming. At least 80% of it was experimental, meaning you had people just, let's try this and see what's going to happen. Then the project getting canceled halfway through. So we have people halfway through a great deal of programming. And a lot of that stuff, of course, comes up with the ayahuasca journey, because those trees are the bridge. The trees, of course, for us were always the teachers, and they are fixed stars, meaning they don't move. And so there's a big connection, of course, with all this, and we'll explore it more. But just to get right back to the topic, what man has to understand how to do is he has to understand how to hold his semen. And this, what it does is it builds up his reverence for female. When a man does not ejaculate his semen, he sees the woman, he begins to see the woman in the light that she should be seen in, which is that there is always a feeling of abundance and a feeling of love. In addition to that, again, because we were created here and then split, as first being androgynous beings.
Right.
Now we do have a void that must be filled with us either finding our other half on a physical or a spiritual, or now what we've gained is even a mental level. And so this is where we are, because many people have now attached themselves to radio hosts and different people, and they've been able to fulfill a lot of what they've been missing. And this is, this is just a wonderful time. Is what we'll see. I see everything coming together. I see us all end up being in one room at a certain point. If you get my drift. The reality is that it's in the mathematics. This is 2012, 2 + 12 = 5. Okay, let's just say we can take it like that. We know that it equals that because in addition to this year, the precession of Venus was being recorded. Of course, we know Venus was the pentagram. We have a major thing going on with the numbers 8 and 5 when it comes to Venus. So we see our entire world has been structured because we see 5 base or pentagrams completely related with one planet. And then we see all this flora and fauna everywhere, all over our planet, as if it could not be imported from another planet and bought here. When you look deeper into it, meaning those who have the third eye and have gone into the other dimensions, they see that most of this flora and fauna stems back through a vine to Venus, an entire hive mind network. And this is the thing that I'm not sure, a lot of times when I listen to certain people have conversations about the spiritual plane and where they are and what's going on there, but many of us that really, really do the travel and really go out to find solutions for humanity. I have an amazing show that came after an amazing experience, but it's called Can You Help My Friend? And it's about being able to push past your fears for someone else. When you can't do it for yourself, understand the state of our reality, and then let that power you past these fears and things that you keep having every time you try to climb the ladder or try to go down the ladder. So this is one of the major things, and we want to welcome everyone into doing this. And we have a lot of stuff that's put together. We're doing a lot more development in different areas to get it out to people. And this is, like I said, it's just amazing time.
You know, you mentioned the man and the woman coming together. And in the first hour of the show, we talked about this Kill the Gays bill that's going on in Uganda. And my views on the whole situation is that that's ultimately a personal liberty, a personal choice. It's the most intimate personal choice that somebody can make. But we're running up on the break right now. We'll keep it going on the other stream, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back right here on truthfrequencyradio.com. We'll keep it going on stream number 2 for everybody tuned in. But let me get your take on this. I mean, how do you think that homosexuality affects the humanity as a whole? Is it something to be concerned about, or do you think I'm right in the sense that, hey, you know, it's your personal choice, it's their personal choice. If they want to do it, go right ahead.
I think if Chris was a woman instead of a man, I'd still fall in love with him. No, I'm serious. You know, just because we've always clicked so much on everything, and we hear each other's thoughts.
I'm glad you're a woman. I really am glad you are.
I'm glad you said that right. But I mean, my take is that, again, third eye open, I've seen a lot more differentiation between a person's asexual, bisexual, C-sexualness. The diversity of the human being, if we're going to start just judging based on small integers about their sexual preference, we might as well keep going, like talking eyes on the top of the head. You know, you might as well not like that. I think that humanity is about to get a big waking up. Like, I'm just here to explain to people what I've already seen and what I know. We don't deal with no placebo, meaning that we don't deal with anything that is not real on all levels. But exactly. I will definitely say that the whole veil of this planet is about to be rent asunder, meaning that what has been separating us from seeing what is here, what's laying within those spaces, as I say, the city that already is overlaying our planet. For us to begin to see that more is really already happening. Now, of course, when you go into other areas that are more rich with, like I said, more indigenous flora and fauna, those things are a lot more older than much of what you will find in the city. So in that text, there's more of a spiritual connection and a spiritual explanation going on about different entities that start to reveal themselves to you. I would just say for all of us, there is I think here's another thing. When we talk about these higher levels, this is something that has to be really cleared up, especially by a lot of teachers, because when we talk about these higher levels, we insist that on these higher levels, there's beings that are pure and that they're here to help, and we just got to get in touch with them, and they're going to come down here. The exact same story that is going on here is going on the other levels, but just on grander levels. They're just different octaves, but the same situation. So when we solve the situation here, it will solve on all subsequent ripples of this entire reality.
Right.
And so there's really nowhere to go. And so I think that's also another thing that starts to pervade everything with the New Age movement is that, we're going to get on a ship, we're going to leave. We're going where? And we're going to leave our mother?
Yeah, I know.
I don't think that this is all really smart, especially if some alien is saying, come with us, we're taking you somewhere, and then you don't even understand Enochian or none of these other languages where you supposedly can communicate with extraterrestrials.
Definitely. Hold that thought. Let me bring us back on Oracle.
Okay.
Conspiracy theories, now conspiracy fact. Thought crime condemned like terroristic attacks. Something I wrote back in 2006, but it's very apparent that now these conspiracy theories are becoming conspiracy facts, and there is a global shift in consciousness, an awakening. And I want to ask Seven of Resistance2010.com, what do you think the reason for that is? Is it that individuals are doing this consciously? Are we just consciously ascending? Or is there some kind of universal or planetary force at work here pushing people to wake up?
Oh, yeah. That's what definitely they, again, we have to reference back to Buddha here for a moment. What he said, he discovered that the gods, for he told people, do not trust in the gods, because he saw later on in the future that the gods would somehow suffer physicality. And that also that the gods can control things on earth, but they never could control the universe. Those wheels are just too big for one particular being that wants to hold things up to stand in front of. You just get crushed in the cog. So you're definitely dealing with an entire universal click where everything is syncing itself up to a point where it aligns. Now, I do want to talk about this. I'm glad you brought this up, because the alignment for you personally, for just to the speaker, can happen at any time. That was what is always that's what these belief systems and the real ones were really about, is that if you decided that you had enough of just the experience that was going on here on the planet. Now, to say that, of course, would mean you had ingested and communicated with all trees, which I think we're really far behind on that. But the thing is that if you had completed that, to get into the higher state was not a difficult thing. And so I think what we're really going to be dealing with here is that people just have to really look at the planetary system has always been governed by the universal system, that the zodiac itself with the 13th wheel on it and different numbers and how they roll into each other, it really does mean something. There is something happening this year where there is a projection, because 2012, as we show, breaks down to also the word Zion. Zion means projection. We can also see the people who control the word Zion, that kind of have the franchise on the word Zion,
right,
what their projection is. Now, their projection, of course, is subject to if we agree with that projection.
Consent,
so the entire thing is to persuade us to agree to basically another world where they will be in control. So this is a very, very specific, very easy thing to really look at. Hell was not made to be displeasing, meaning it wasn't made to be a place where you would recognize that you were actually in it. So for us to rise from the hell frequency means to actually vanquish darkness. Darkness is ignorance. It's what you don't know, the dark matter. You can't see it. You don't have access to it. We have things in our planetary system. This is the other thing that the Buddha said. He said, but don't fear. After this statement about not being able to trust the gods and things like that, I'm sure the people had long faces. But then he said, but don't fear. I've discovered that everything that's needed to ascend can be found here on earth. And there was a big ease at that point. But everyone knew they now had to go on the quest. And so even when you move, it's the constellation change. You're going through occultation, the street names that you're on, the people that are around you, all of that does mean something. And when you understand the system that redundifies across the universe, then you start to pull this stuff out of everywhere. It all starts to make sense because the universe cannot deviate from the universal knowledge or it would not be here. So once you learn the universal knowledge, then you see how everything really works. That raises your frequency because it actually starts to turn your system on. And to get you finances and to get you different things that are going to help you continue your quest is not a problem. And so that's what people have to be really, really prepared to receive. But they have to work for it. That's the thing. This is a planet. It's just like it says, it's a plant. You must till in the garden. All of this stuff is symbolic. You reap every full moon what you were doing that month. It'll come in full bore. So there's also an ancient story. Maybe we'll have to get into this some other time, but there's an ancient story that holds true with this planet, where it came from, who is here, what are some of these other beings on the astral plane. All of that really has been mapped out already. It's just now being brought to us, and so I see it as an amazing time. I can't see it any other way because it wouldn't be true. It wouldn't be real sight.
Tell us about that. We've got plenty of time.
Okay, well, really what we're seeing is the world coming off of an entire belief system of monotheism, which mono, of course, is an anagram for the word moon. So Nanar Sin, or Halal, which is also the god of the Arabs and even sometimes has Jehovah in tow, has basically kept the world, or attempted to keep the world, in a permanent black hole of knowledge, meaning that no knowledge would ever come. And there were many individuals that risked their lives and risked themselves on multiple levels in order to make sure that there was still something sparkling by around the time that we would become awake again and ready to receive it. But our world itself has been under the control of what I would say are the more primordial energies, and why one may start gearing themselves up for the one to blame. They can only look at them really as mother and father if they understand how this whole thing is wired together when you talk about pyramid systems, that everyone would eventually stem back to the same being. So what happens is that I started to really, really dig deeper into these hierarchies of spiritual beings, because when I was younger, I was always in pursuit of the highest that you could reach into one of these religions. I had not yet understood that it was beyond religion what I was seeking. But when I went into Christianity, I sought to be a prophet. I didn't really have an interest in the pastor's position. So I asked someone there, how do you become a prophet? And they said, oh, son, you need the Holy Ghost. And this is one of those things I think that people need to also start checking, because the entire Bible is written from an occult level, and even the practices are very occult and ritualistic. So people have to now start looking at the results of that, instead of saying, okay, well, yeah, that's why I don't do that anymore, or that's why I don't like people that do that. Let's just start looking at the results of that. So the results of rituals and pacts and standing on buildings that are configured like the real physical temple of the body, which are many, many times in certain points ley lines, powerful ley lines. What really happens to an individual once they engage in such practices? What happens is they actually get astral baggage, for better lack of words, other beings that come along for the journey because the person has allowed it to happen. When we look at the word even pray means to hunt for something. So when a person gets on their knees and asks for something that is of a specific frequency, God, give me a car. There's only certain beings that can answer that anyway. For anyone who understands evocations, goetias, and these type of things, each being has a particular service. So anytime you're asking for something to manifest on the physical plane, you're already asking a being that is capable of doing that, so thus it positions them a certain way. We just have to come to amends with this. Many people have been making continuous pacts with beings that they don't even understand who they are and where they're from and what their whole agenda is, etc. Mm-hmm. So we have a lot of work also to do on this dimension, because those beings have to also be convinced to go in a high frequency. Some people say, great, we're going to leave all these lower beings behind because now the truth is going to come. Actually, that's not how it works. Many of those beings are shadows of other people's thoughts and ideas. So what happens is that they talk about this in the deeper text, the Arab text. many of us function like orgone, human orgone, where when we get into these environments that are laden with these beings that haven't seen the light, they get an opportunity to pick up on your biorhythm, your light transmission. For better lack of words, for people who carry a lot of energy, their aura or torus is very large. So when they go into a building, it's scrubbing across everyone's stuff. So this is how what I call the organic network is continuously being developed even now. When you talk about, well, what are the higher beings doing? The ones that are helping us, they're developing the organic network. They're putting people in the know, quickening them, letting them go through their shamanistic tradition or their tribal tradition without even them knowing it, powering them up and getting them ready for certain points where the energy itself, when it comes time to bring Earth alive, because first the individuals who want to go out first and activate themselves, they have the opportunity to do that. When Earth comes alive herself, which is definitely going to happen, all subsequent beings on the macrocosm will also come alive. They will activate. However, this is what they call Judgment Day, because if your chakras are lined up, you can receive the energy and you will remain conscious through your transit, or whatever they call it. However, if you cannot receive the energy because you are blocked in a chakra, meaning a planet or archon is still holding you back, the energy bottlenecks there and the person basically wormholes into that particular dimension. This is how the implosion process takes place in planetary transformations. Now, the other thing is, this could already happen and be happening with people, and you wouldn't really know edgewise. Meaning, many of us that are here have basically already arrived into this reality from other planes. And I hope that makes a little bit of sense. Meaning that some people have been kind of dormant. They've been kind of walking around, not really knowing what they're going to do. And then all of a sudden, they have this mission. What is that? It's when the other corresponding energies basically come into you. You are the vessel. That's why in magic, the pentagram is used for evocation, because the pentagram is a gate. The pentagram is 5. 72 times 5 is 360 degrees. So with our bodies, because, of course, Leonardo da Vinci and many of the others way before then proved that the body is configured on this 5 pentagram shape, this makes us the gate. So this alien invasion is already happening through the gates of the person's body.
Well, you mentioned the number 72. Any correlation to the 72 demons of the Goetia?
Definitely. Well, it's really the Council of 9, because, we can still simplify the 7 plus 2 is 9. There's many things in these degrees, and I recommend people really take a look at a certain part of the site. It's called Occult Systems. It's a group, particularly in the site. There's 2 works published there. I want to give some real big shots out to Scott Olson. He's the developer of In Plain Sight. And, man, just an awesome video. We got it linked there if you want to check it out. It really lets you just see what energy they've been evoking from the geometric level. And so if you're occultly adept, then you understand what's really been going on in the U.S. and all across the world with why they keep tapping the ley lines and placing certain images on them, etc., and the Amazonian goddess and what's really going on with that whole saga. I just call it the occult reptilian saga. There's also another document there by an Ellis Taylor. Ellis Taylor, it's called the Esoteric Alphabet. The gentleman's done an exceptional job at really, really getting the deep information about where the English language came from and what the shape of these letters really mean. The Code of the Matrix, of course, goes in deep to why a week, like we say every week, but weak means you have no strength, why the words are like that, and why the word backwards means backwards. The words are backwards. And so we uncover different things like that. And this is where a person can start to spend more time if they're thinking that, okay, well, I may be idle on this mission. No, you have a lot to learn. Even the English language is only 26 letters. So that means it's half of it's half of the language, because 26 plus 26 is, of course, 52. You have 52 months or 52 weeks in a year. So it shows the English language is also a Kabbalah or a cable, and it has an end that connects. But if you only have a part of the cable, which is the symbol of a D, then you get all of the symbols of the D, the destruction, the Diablo, the devil. There's many of the different things that connect like that we should be taking a look at now to really get a north on where we're going to be at here in the future.
Let me bring us back in on Oracle real quick.
Okay.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Hour number 3 right here on Truth Frequency. Resistance2010.com, the website. Seven, our guest. And Seven, didn't mean to interrupt, but please pick it up.
Oh, man, I mean, you're going to have to give me a topic off that list.
Okay. We were going into some numerology there, but absolutely fascinating information so far. And you mentioned that 2012 is Phi, correct?
Yeah, it's actually the awakening of Phi. Like I said, this thing is like a train. So as long as we got that, then that's as long as I can keep going, and it'll get stronger and stronger as we keep going. But really what we look at is even Zecharia Sitchin's 12th planet was Venus. It's not really a Nibiru from the way that people are looking at it now. Really much of his text was plagiarized from many of the Mayan codex, which we have located under the 2012 tab of the website. There's actual 2012 tab where you get a chance to see all of the codex that were taken from the Mayans and the people that were in Guatemala, or the Aztecs, and their Aztechnology, because which is actually a website that builds major components for space shuttles. But the Aztechnology is really what's sending this projection that we're calling Earth now. And when you start understanding the language that you're seeing, when you're into the altered state of consciousness, especially with the DMT, you see a language running through things. And for those that have been able to capture that language, including myself, and then bring it back into the reality, it looked very similar to what the Aztecs and the Mayans were writing, as if they were using it like a code. And I think one of the major programs for computers is called Maya, to develop realities.
Yeah, right? I know what you're talking about. I've seen it.
Well, okay, so how that really connects is that I believe that the joke is still on us, that when those that needed to be transmuted came over into the indigenous lands, that they said, you're standing, that is like in the movie The Fountain, it says, the guy says, you're standing on the new world. But they killed all those people. But again, those people didn't really see death the way we saw death. They saw themselves as the sacrifice. And they were ready to sacrifice themselves if they could then put the beings that sacrificed them inside of their minds. Because if you sacrifice someone, nothing ends there. You have to pay a certain recompense. Mainly, you are kind of like, just as if you kill someone, you're kind of bequeathed to them in the next lifetime. So it's just like trade for trade. People think it doesn't work like that, but our physical reality is a very close implication of what exactly happens on the other higher levels. You just have to know how it connects. So basically, I just kind of got a little bit off my train of thought.
Oh, that's okay. I was going to ask you before, though, what the difference I see between DMT and ayahuasca is that, yeah, you can do more in ayahuasca, but in our day and age, we are heading into what Terence McKenna called the time wave theory. And novelty, like iPhones, being able to talk to somebody on the other side of the world, or in Costa Rica in front of, thousands of people. Don't you think that we're ready for something like DMT now that our consciousness is becoming
Well, hold
greater?
that thought. We've got the break coming up. We'll pick it up on stream number 2 for you, ladies and gentlemen. And happy birthday to Santos Bonacci, who hosts the show right after ours. It's 49 today. Old man, too. I've noticed a lot of Aries, though.
Lots
we'll be
of
right
Aries.
back.
Hello friends, I am the Anti-Terrorist, and you're listening to Truth Frequency.
They want to externally manipulate the body computer so it doesn't pick up these truth vibrations, these higher levels of awareness that are coming in so fascinating.
It's all visible, like mind control techniques employed in the mainstream media.
And by perpetuating that fear and maintaining that throughout every level of society, it becomes really difficult to actually break through to people, to actually get them to see that they can find this love and this higher consciousness within themselves.
And this often helps a lot because some of the most elusive mysteries you're not able to apprehend them directly. You can only apprehend them by negation as to finding out what they're not.
The veil is lifted and we can see things as they are. And ultimately, we have control over that.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, right here on truthfrequencyradio.com. Speaking with Seven, resistance2010.com is his website. And Shuri, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're ready for DMT.
Well, I mean, I think that, I want to chime in a little bit on that. He did make a remark that the Aries energy was running forth. And people have to understand that the first zodiac, this is really the beginning of the year now. Like many people wonder, well, when is this whole thing going to start? It actually started about 2 weeks ago or a week ago, really. And that's what the 322 with Skull and Bones really means. It means March 22nd, which is the turn or the choosing of the Aster, where the world chooses its goddess. And what's been happening is the ram runs forth because it's known that the ram, of course, the fallopian tubes, and the baby must ram its way through the wall of the mother's womb in order to come into the world. So the energy is very high. Of course, it springs forth, and it does cause a lot of you'll see now what the rest of the year will be like based on the seeds that are planted now.
Right.
And as far as the DMT and what humans are ready to do with the DMT, I think that there's people now that are being, because the DMT is alive, and that's one thing that people have to be very clear about, is because there's an actual, any of these trees, because the process that you're taking the acacia through is also a process that can be, that an indigenous plant, let's say, for instance, we take an indigenous, almost extinct plant, through the same process that we take to synthesize the DMT. The experience that you're going to have is going to be with that plant. Mm-hmm. So there is, if you wanted to go deeper under the microscope, even though they show us the molecules of the DMT, there's another zoom in, which is very specific to what you synthesize the DMT from. And so from that level, we really have, when most people use acacia, we have one particular frequency that is choosing to basically open itself up to broadcast a message about what is going on out there. And that particular energy does stem from a particular place. And that's, I think, many of us that have become adept have been identifying the beings so that we have a better faring, like your husband was saying, like we want to guide this astral journey that we're going to be going on, or when we're out of the body, we want to be able to know what we're doing. And so a big part of that is knowing who are these energies. And so I was able to really, really get that pinpointed to how long this tree has been assisting humans in getting enlightened. Who else is connected into that network? Because, of course, CIA, the CIA, of course, is into the acacia. They're into a lot of different things because they are also responsible for policing a large part of the occult network when someone does do one of the Crowleyan rituals the right way and open up a black hole in order to bring in many of the darker energies. Like, they get neutralized. So there's another thing going on that still underlays our reality, and there's also many people that are being recruited to take those positions. So there's almost like a Men in Black thing going on, but maybe not by the term Men in Black and how everyone understands the Men in Black to be a very malicious network.
And welcome back to the Oracle Stream. And Seven, let me ask you this. Earlier in the broadcast, you mentioned a term that I've used before to describe an ayahuasca or DMT experience. It's like an elevator. And one of our experiences that we experienced together was getting off what we described as the wrong floor and encountering these aliens who looked kind of like grays, but they had pointed ears, if not horns. It was kind of hard to tell whether they were horned or whether they had pointed ears, but they seemed extremely upset. They were cussing us out telepathically, like literally. They were, "What the F are you doing here? Get the F out of here," et cetera, et cetera. "You're not effing supposed to be here." They were extremely hostile. So would you say that there are those levels? I mean, can DMT take you to maybe a lower level, or is that actually a higher level but a negative level? And have you ever experienced anything like that?
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, there's more to the DMT. We generally take it really from like a step-by-step level and understand how to do, like I have on the list there, vortex imprinting. Many people kind of titled this, I thought I was the first one to coin the title, but I heard someone else say it, which let me know that it's just one of those collective things. But yes. Astral hygiene, which is basically, if you look at in the Old Testament, there was a certain group of herbs that Solomon burned in order to create a field that basically created the portal that when you come out of the body, you go immediately into that. And of course, we know that things like mint and things like that charge the overall frequency of the environment and make it higher. But I will say also that what I mean by there's more to the DMT is because the real projection is, of course, within the sun. DMT at 7 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, looking directly at the sun, lets you see way more of the code than at night when it's dark, even though you can become receptive to other things.
That's odd that you say that, because in my experiences, I have to have complete darkness. Even little LED lights from, say, the stereo or coming off of the DVD player or whatever is in the room with me, it is completely blinding.
Well, I would say it's either complete darkness or complete light. That would probably be the best way. Complete natural light or complete darkness is the two states that I would say would be most premium on the DMT.
Okay.
But looking at 6 o'clock in the morning, like I said, right when the sun's coming up, 15 minutes, the energy from the sun it's giving energy, and then from the rest of the day, it's taking energy. And that's why the Egyptians classified the sun in different stages, because they knew about these different energies that the sun sends off during certain times through its aggression. But I think it's like a 30-minute window when the sun is coming up. That'll looking into that basically makes a person very aware. It actually opens up the certain facilities that are in there, because of course you can hear that sound, and that sound is of course the lotus flower or whatever you want to call it beginning to open up even more. It's very similar to looking at a flower and how some of the bottom petals start to pop and then they start to open up too. So that's what you're really dealing with when you look into the sun, or you have your eyes closed but looking towards the sun. It has an entirely it's amazing. Like I'm excited that something like this is even on the planet. And I always say, whatever happens in this world and whatever's going on and et cetera, and whatever I know about it still makes virtually no difference to me, because I've got a chance to pretty much try the highest thing available here. So yeah. For me, it's the elevator is always going up, and then I take the elevator up, I come back down. To me, it's very easy now to understanding the full gamut of this, especially with I talk about those malevolent energies. There's other machinery such as the GB4000. I have a video also about the GB4000. What it is a lab-grade frequency generator that comes with vortex and printing plates. It also has a photon light emission tube, and of course, photon is the same energy that comes off the sun. I'll say in theory, if you have to have a carrier for frequency. Like if I play over 20,000 hertz, of course, you can't even hear it. But once I get into that range, which is really where you're dealing with more of concentrated information, kind of what you really need. The more concentrated, the more pure, of course. When you to be able to receive that, you only can receive it through photon as a carrier. And I had to learn all of this stuff when I started messing around with frequency. But you don't want to really send certain levels of frequency through sound, because it puts the body, it stresses the body, it can even hurt the body. So if you notice that the third eye is very sensitive to light, and you see that in the DMT. So when you put, let's say,
you're absolutely right about that, because I notice even with my eyes closed, if I have some kind of light source in the room, the third eye seems to be overwhelmed with light.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, you hit it right on the head.
Exactly. So if you can push it further, it's almost like overclocking it.
Mm-hmm.
I gotcha. Okay.
Looking into photon light gives you a data packet. The data packet, it definitely quickens, but for those that are looking for more, basically they're looking for more in this reality. They need those data packets because it changes their reality. It changes their boss, and it changes it changes so many things that are necessary for them to get out of where they're stuck at. And then here's another thing. People have to really, really wake up from a level that there's only a few things that you can really do to open up the vehicle itself, because that's why it's in a pentagram. A pentagram is a pin. The first place in the U.S. was Pennsylvania. They show that they're very into this because this was the apple because, of course, we cut an apple down the middle. It has 5 seeds there. It's a pentagram. So this was the apple or the knowledge that teaches one good or evil because Venus is upside down. So because Venus is the pentagram planet and it's upside down right now, that means it's giving out all of the energy that we know to be related to an upside down pentagram. But when it spins right side up, then it will give all of the energy related to what we know about a right side up pentagram. And so this is also where the 2012 is really coming in at it, because it's now clicked. Some are arguing about whether it's right side up or upside down. I say, who cares? If it clicks, then that means that we're at a major segment and we have this opportunity to collect ourselves, because we're scattered across many of these dimensions. And I just want to explain how we get scattered across dimensions very fast, because everything is on a cyclic nature. Of course, we have an aura. Our aura spins, the planet spins, etc. So what happens when we decide to leave a life? Now, remember, the mind can convince the soul for a moment that it can die, but the soul is immortal. But what they say is that the reason why this is still all fair is because a person can will themselves to die. And this happens when a sequence of decisions have been made during the life and the person decides that the life can't be turned around. Then they start, and this happens on even a subconscious level, then they actually start to shut down, and then they self-terminate themselves. They say, oh, something happens, they get shot, they get run over, who knows. Then they start a new life, because this is almost like being selfish. I'm done with this life. I want to go on to another one. I'm going to start a new one. So when they go into the new one and they begin to start that one, the old one begins from the beginning again. Mm-hmm. And it starts to spin the same life that the person has been living. Now, on any dimension, you have the chance to go back into those lives and to change the outcomes. Basically, don't terminate. Then, when you choose not to terminate in all your subsequent lifetimes, then you open up your spiral. This spiral is, of course, the same phi spiral, etc. You open it up because if you notice with a shell has these walls in each time it's formed. So basically, it shows you, even within the shell, that there is a block between each of your lives. There's a wall there. Because of how you died, you don't want to go back to that point. Something didn't happen. You're not supposed to die. So this is what we get opportunity to do, is go into the framework of our brains. If we could just stop holding grudges long enough and start to revitalize ourselves with the information that has been made available. The power is universal. So what's happened is it's just like steel. We can either fashion it to make a plowshare and then start tilling the field and start growing stuff, or we can fashion it into a sword and run it through our brother and sister. So, but it's still steel. Like steel, it doesn't, you see what I mean? So we have this opportunity to take this energy, this power, these portals that are within us, it is us, and to utilize it in a way that is definitely opposite to what we've been seeing as an experience. Meaning that we've now seen what happens when people get the power and then it bottlenecks within them. They even get to imagining that this is the only thing here, like the reptilian state of mind that you lock into, or the serpent,
right?
The pentagram again. So it's a de-evolutionized state of our own, and not a separate species. You rip off the human from the neck and take off the limbs, which are gathered through lives, and you have the snake again, just the spine and the head. So we have to grow beyond. Anything that we choose to hate is only the switching of the zodiac. When they chose to sacrifice the ram, it was over for Aries.
Right.
When they chose to put the reptilian on the cross, because that's Nehushtan, then it was over for Jesus. And the whole solar cycles and the sun gods and all the S's and the way they spin diesel. So this is something that we now have to really embrace. See how much we grow from it. And this is the other thing. As long as things could go well, people will forgive. Meaning that in all of this, if we can make the best out of this for our species, what will happen is people say, well, I know that I cannot change any small part of my past or it equals an entirely different future. So that means all of my experience that I had on Earth that were negative, I can go ahead and wash that because it's only holding me back. And that's when the person ceases to have a shadow. In physical life, there are people who don't have shadows because there is no other correspondence to them because they're fully collected. There is another world, and we're skipping around a little bit here, but there's another world on the other side of the mirror. life now behooves us to stop being scared of it. This other side of ourselves, this horned side. This is what people have to also realize. They have a horn correspondence, a lower dimensional self. They love to talk about their higher dimensional self. They'll embrace him or her. But when it comes to the lower dimensional, they're leaving them there.
Well, that's what we're working towards, isn't it? To detach ourselves from that lower self?
In reality, it all must transmute. It must be transmuted in the universe. If you want to ask yourself, what is the universe interested in? What is the universe getting out of all this? Because I see we're having a great time, I guess. But why would the universe continue to run this? Because there is always an effort to keep the creation perfected. It was created perfect, but it's spinning. So anytime it gets hit, it gets into imperfection, meaning that you have to work on perfection all the time. And that, for us, is what we're now calling DNA. So when we get our DNA continuously working correctly, this is where we get into more switches come on. As you've seen, there is way more to this reality than we're actually allowed access to. But many of us have been given access, and we can see why we don't have access. I'll tell you, it's one of the problems with the body is its capacity to hold energy. Right. When you get into real fields of energy, you can see as much as you can take is as much as they have. Mm-hmm. So it becomes a problem to be able to operate on a physical plane fully charged. You stutter. I mean, everything that comes out of your mouth is so surreal. So the reality is that more people have to be created. And this is why many of the new babies that are coming out have mixtures of the alchemy, for better lack of words, in order to allow them to be able to project us into the next set of our experience. Because everyone will go. See, what was learned in, especially a lot of these people that do magic, I guess, and say they've talked to demons and stuff before, I don't get it. Did they not see the same thing that I saw? When you seal a demon, it only takes a certain amount of time for it to break the seal. Once it does that, it comes back in fury, just like it records in the Bible. So basically, what's being asked of humanity, is there any other way that you have to deal with your negative problems besides locking them up? Because you got a whole prison of people all over your world that are locked up, that are those same demons that you also keep locking up. See, this is way more deeper than humanity was able to put their mind around when they were still thinking for themselves. Once they started to go universal, then this full realization of that all must transmute comes into play. Now then, this is where the gauntlet's a competition, for better lack of words, friendly competition, to see who can utilize their powers best to transmute. Can you make a cripple climb trees? Basically, can you convert the individual that everyone thinks can't be transmuted into higher energy? There's no use for them. So this is still back on the teacher, and that's why when I went into the higher planes and talking with the higher beings, they said the humanity is not at fault. It's those that we stationed as beacons and teachers. They resonate different kind of energies. You call them planets. But there's these teachers that are here, some of them are Saturnalians, Martians, Venusians, these different teachers running around the planet, and they were commissioned with figuring out how they were going to get their stuff together, get their story straight, make it universal, and then give it to humanity in order for them to unlock themselves from the prison. They're still quarreling with each other as if the money and things make a difference. So you see all of what's going on, but it's all about to stop. See, if you really ask yourself, especially where the movies are leading to, what would really change humanity? It's the encounter. But humanity thinks the encounters will come from the sky. The sky, basically, I don't want to make this really complex, but there is no sky from the level that everything that's out there is actually inside of you. Mm-hmm. Now, all you're seeing is a projection from your third eye. That's what all of this really is. And, of course, you learn that also with DMT as the field starts to dematerialize. There is another state with DMT. As you see, every time you breathe in DMT, you can get higher. This is also where it gets crazy, because when you hold your breath, then you feel something almost say, breathe, breathe, what are you doing, breathe. And this is because the ancient teachings say that the serpent does live in the base of the spine, and the only way he'll come out is if you deprive him of air. And that's why this whole breathing thing and yoga and all that really started, was to be able to deprive this thing that normally is asleep and doesn't do anything, to wake up, because if it doesn't, it'll die.
Well, that's funny that you say that, because my natural instinct, as soon as I start to break the veil, is to hold my breath. And I have to remind myself to breathe. You're absolutely right.
The next thing that the next field is, you realize you don't even have to breathe. It's the strangest thing. I still am trying to blame it that we have pores and we're like fish, and maybe that's why. But what I really felt was, so much of who we think we are here, this physicality, is so much an idea. All the things that we say we have to do, it doesn't really exist. It's from multiple levels you begin to see this. I started to basically get to a level where there was a wave of energy that just kept rising. Now, I've experienced this before through mantra, and in a few particular instances, and this is also what we should talk about in regards to changing the vibrational frequency of the body and what people have been doing to get in touch with spirits. Like, how did all this really start? If you notice, in religions, there are particular names, mainly a name for the god and mainly a name for the spiritual component of the god. In many texts, those names, when called for 2 or 3 hours, cause a weird reaction within the individual, because the person's body has changed complete frequency to the frequency of that name. Thus, they are now in direct connection. So you basically called this being's telephone number by its name. So we went further to see what many of these beings were, such as the Tetragrammaton, and what they were really connected to. And that's why people will witness that most of what they've been thinking is all-powerful has nothing on what's here. But there are beings, such as Tetragrammaton, also his other side, he's Janus, known as Yaldabaoth, is a real entity that has been running around the planet that's time is over. As they said, there was a reign of the serpent for 1,000 years. We're at the end of that cycle. So the reign ends when the information about what is secret comes out. This is, of course, the number 13. Number 13 is a very powerful number because it's also the half of our English alphabet. 13 plus 13 equals 26. So 13 could be also symbolized as a D or a door. But what we found out is that when you're traveling through planes, you don't need just a door. You need 2 doors. And this is why the ones that are in power even call themselves 2 doors. And that symbol is also an 8 because you have a portal in and a portal back, for better lack of words. You don't ever want to go somewhere that you can't come back. Right. You need a jumper and a catcher, as they say sometimes. So the geometry leads into, when you understand how your third eye works, being able to basically put that into your third eye and jump through it. And this is what's been going on. Like, I'm explaining to you also things that have already been going on. And this is also the advantage level of what we're calling controllers, etc. Because they are already jumping into different states of their own consciousness and jumping into different portals. And the only thing that's been happening is the limitation of humanity understanding that that can even happen.
Let me ask you where this plays in. One of the problems that I have with smoking DMT, a lot of times I'll start to choke or cough on what I'm smoking. How does that affect the experience? And aside from physical things to do to avoid that, are there any other ways to avoid it?
Well, I always generally coat the throat. Really what I'm looking for, because I've only been into the DMT experience 11 times now. And the reason is because I'm looking for probably around 23, 24, because I've already started to see where, just like McKenna said, you have the abilities to do what you're doing in this world. Mm-hmm. And so I understand that DMT and that even that kind of smoke and putting smoke into the lungs is very, it's very aggressive on the lungs. So I'm working towards a certain point. Now, what I'm also seeing is that before the DMT, when I would wake up and I would look at a white wall, I would see a grid, and then it would start to fade away. And then I put a cover over my eyes again, and then I would rip it off, and I would see that grid again. So what I'm starting to realize is that you have these abilities that DMT is, of course, giving. Of course, the key is to be able to do it without DMT. Where that really lies is within the final activation. And I'll talk about this. Even though the DMT it's a constant experience, it's a constant quest. Even to go back in, because it's non-binding, you don't all the time want to go on a DMT experiment. So the reality is that there is a leveling up process that's happening with the individual when they're taking the DMT. The DMT is a preparatory phase for when this energy, as you see, is coming from the moon. You see that each lunar cycle seems to get more and more intense, even for the person's energy level. So the DMT is only giving you basically the experiences that you'll have anyway once the body is completely turned on. Now, this complete turning on is a preparation thing because, and that's why I said the pineal gland is, when it's completely turned on, is on a timer. And it's on a timer before it completely turns on. It's like an egg cracking, the calcium that's around it. Well, what happens is that when it's all in timing. Like, many people think that they're just taking the DMT and they have, like, it's an open thing and they have access to it at a certain point, but that's not what's really going on. What's really going on is that the beings that are over DMT, which are from the sea too. I'm not sure if you've noticed, there's a lot of aquatic things in this big ocean. Like, we're basically a hive mind neural network soaked in mist. Our environment is so rich with mist, even though we see it as we're out of the water. If you're on any other planet, it looks like everything here is underwater. So I know, again, that we've skipped around a little bit, but what I really see with the DMT is that it's going to be a certain point where many of the individuals that have been taking DMT will no longer need DMT. The planet will actually catch up to where they are in DMT. Then when they take the breath, they'll get this funny feeling in their stomach, then a throbbing in the throat. And this is the throbbing when that throat chakra, which controls all of what goes on within the crown chakra, because basically the body is several bodies. That's what the whole phi nature is. You got a face. That's why you can go to the feet and you can find every single organ in parts of the feet. So there's a man on your feet. There's a man in your stomach, or a body in your stomach. There's a body in your face, which it shows you with the Vietnamese teaching of how to cure a person's ailments through pressure points within the face. So these systems, understanding these systems and what they're used for, is really what we're getting into now. And that's really where the Resistance 2010 has opened up. And like I said, also AstroQuest is really the first reality. It's actually a virtual reality and reality platform. So even if you don't want to play because you don't like computers or PDAs, you can actually do it yourself, because you can do it in a physical way and just, check in every now and then and get certain things. Because what happens is we have people that are on the chakra centers of the world. They just live there. Even with in the Resistance, there's people that live out in many of these areas. There's certain things we need to connect with at times to progress on our spiritual quest. And this is really what AstroQuest is about. Sometimes you just need the stone. The stones are so powerful because they are another fractalized version of us in different energy centers. It's a major communication going on with crystals and humanity. So getting closer to those crystals, especially the Synergy crystals and even some of the meteorites, is a way to quicken and get information. There's so much information in the application, basically it never ends. So you can continuously gather as much as you can take. And what the Mayans recommended is that you visit every single chakra center in the world before the 2012 cycle or the procession of Venus was complete. That way, all of your chakra centers will be ready for the transformation. In reality, people at times just need a stone to put on the chakra that corresponds to a stone from that place to put on the chakra that corresponds to that particular place in order to gain what they need to gain. But we have to be real about this, meaning that we have to understand that that is how it works. Some people say, well, I don't need to go to a chakra center to be activated. And this is, of course, a person that's not activated. So this is where it's time to like cut through much of the plane and start talking about, okay, well, how are we really supposed to guide the planet into the next existence anyway if we were responsible for that? Because I believe we are. And we've been operating in that capacity for 2 years as the individuals that were responsible for bringing this level of knowledge to humanity. And because I got it before I had read Tessarian, before I read David Icke, before I read any of those, I went through a quickening process through the highest levels of the religious systems that exist on the planet. I'm just one of those that, the one that got away, basically. And sometimes I will tell people also, sometimes you don't have to be sworn in it. Sometimes you're born in it, meaning that sometimes the individuals that are around you, family members, ancestors, these different things kind of try to govern your life. But as I said, a name is a prison. God is free. The reality is that sometimes we have to break out of some of these molds that we've known to be counterproductive because they came from, quote unquote, our ancestors. We have ancestors that were even drunken. And so when we feel like we want to drink, that is the call of that ancestor to go and fulfill that drinking. So we have to instruct that ancestor at times to, hey, not now. This didn't get us anywhere during that lifetime.
Well, you know what I find odd is on ayahuasca, the first couple of times, actually smoked DMT, first couple of times that Cherie and I took it together, she saw Christian symbolism. I saw a lot of Mayan symbolism. And I think you're onto something there with the ancestor energy, because she was raised from a long line of pastors, and my great-grandmother was a shaman.
Right. I mean, it's already, I won't say, it's more like they staked the claim already. It's more like an etheric connection. And it's interesting because I also still see the continuation of each of those factions was still to continuously push beyond. Like, even for us to even say that we understand what the Most High is really foolish, since we haven't, like I said, still understood what the relationship between most of these plants and animals that live here on this planet are to us. Like, there's a deep relationship between these animals and their story of why they're here, the animalistic energies that we all express, and how even the little stars, the Canis Major, and well, actually how the little stars like Canis become major. I should say it like that. There's a whole procession that continues, and I talk about also that there's not just really one controller when we're looking at the reality. I wanted to get into that with people to let them know there's also a third party which seeks to control any space. So the first individuals were like, well, let's get a lot of physical space. And so they went to war and gathered themselves in territories, etc. And then once they got that, then they said, well, let's go to space out there. And then they went out there, and then they didn't get much back. And then they got kicked off. And then they basically weren't allowed up there. And then so they said, well, wait a minute. That must not be the real space. Let's go with the space of people's minds. And so you have these thought forms, which are archons, living in soul groups, living entire soul groups in people's minds. And this is where when you get cults, like Christianity is a cult to me, like all these religions to me are cults only because I've went through them, so I know what's behind there. And that's the other thing, that many people have judged other individuals for what they say about religion, such as Christianity and Islam, etc. And they say, well, let's have freedom of religion.
Exactly,
let's have no religion.
Yes.
I don't really see how religion was ever free. It means to re-legion, meaning to basically create an entire armament of soldiers to fight again. Mm-hmm. And they even say you're a soldier in the army of the Lord. Now, Phi is fighting. It's combustion. And if you see, it's a Chinese symbol because they were the first ones to get in touch with Venus. Venus is also called the serpent. And they do worship the dragon. Everyone knows the red dragon is Venus. It's almost like sometimes people have to put it all together and then solve it. This is how the tarot was configured. Solve or soul means the sun. Purify it with the sun. So all of these things can be purified, meaning they have an instructor. It may be you, meaning that these wayward children, notice how since we have this big God concept, right? Did not God create the angels perfect? Like we need to ask ourselves some step-by-step questions here. Were the angels not perfect? Don't we think angels are perfect?
That's what they say.
What happened with the fallen angels then? Is this an exception to God's perfection? So we see that perfection is a prolonged thing. It just doesn't happen in the beginning. You have to maintain it. So when you don't maintain it, you slip. It's almost like going sleep or going into a wobble. And you have to correct it. And as they say, it's got to run its course. You always hear the old people say, it's got to run its course. Once it runs its course, it'll correct itself because it'll go back to what it was in the beginning. So what were we in the beginning? Before all these books, before all these religions, because we're about to go there. And this is why I think, again, cutting through. Like, instead of using all the complex stuff, let's look at the simple stuff. We're all in a circle. We're going to return to the beginning. The beginning was our original state. How do we leave our original state? Basically wandering, not understanding how to map, not understanding how to distinguish, how to psychonaut or not travel your own psyche. So we're kids then. See, some people, they go doomsday then. Oh, that's why we're in Orion and they have us prisoners. No, we're kids. Only kids are prisoners. Prisoner is a root word, pre-Zion, meaning before the projection where you're at, in prison. So it's the preliminary phrase. After the projection, you should not be in the prison. So this is what we come to bring. We come to bring the keys. That's why you always see the Pope, he's holding the keys. The keys to set a person free. Because, see, when they created the code of Jesus, it says that Jesus went to hell and took the keys from Satan. Well, I tell you the truth, he didn't let anyone out. People think that this entity is the individual. It's all confused, basically. You're still dealing with paperwork from Apollonius of Tyana.
Right.
The real results of Kundalini does have the ability to make everyone think you're a messiah if they've never seen it before. And the Greeks had really never seen anything of that nature because they were vulgar. They were from Vulcan. They even connected on deeper levels with destroying Mars and all of its wars. And then the rams, the blood, the sea, the parting of the Red Sea with Moses. All of this stuff is symbolic for, again, the universal progression. But when we understand that fully, we not only have the actual layout of how to direct our lives, but just as anything grows, you have to know where you were before so that you know what you are to become. And now we can get stronger as we keep coming around these cycles. Because you can see certain things when it's spinning around, it starts to get stronger and stronger as it's going around, not weaker and weaker. So this is really what we want to do. We want to boost humanity into this next level, and we want to make ourselves responsible for that. And here's another thing. There's a big level of responsibility that we have to take, because that's what was transferred to me from the higher levels of the experiences. I asked, what is the situation going on here, especially with the ones we know as archons? And they said the archons have not taken responsibility, meaning that the fathers and mothers, the ancient ones, have still not taken full responsibility for what they did. Meaning when they created and did not know how to create, because there's a way you have to bring a baby into the world. And it makes sure that, as Khalil Gibran said, that when you shoot an arrow, it goes straight. But after you shoot it, you can't tell it where to go. So basically, once the child comes out, it's over from that point. The only real rearing a parent can do is while the child is still inside the womb. So these are things that have become the catamount problem, as we see on the reality, that is about to be solved because many individuals are bringing the information from the sun, meaning the code that it uses to program the reality, not sun worshipers. Again, the code that is used to program the reality, bringing that code here and reprogramming the reality out of its destructive cycle. That's what the DMT, that's what the Psychonauts, that's what many of the individuals, the Astroquesters, the Riders of the Wave, there's so many different names, the Activated, the Superhuman, the one that really sees themselves in the dream taking care of business, you're taking care of business. Now it's time to put it into the physical plane, because that will be the last sign that you've fully connected, that you've understood the Great Arcanum. Basically, it says the Great Arcanum is to send energy up to the sun and then have it come down within the force of the sun back into you, and then you send it out again. That's the visual gesture that you never think any of this is because of you. Anytime someone else sends you the credit or whatever, you say, it's not me, man, it's all of us. This is like a whole big collective thing, because that's the truth.
No, I completely agree. And like I just posted in the chat room, the show feels like a DMT experience. So much information just flying through into the mind. It's kind of like in Star Wars movie, where they go into hyperspace and you see all the light just kind of passing you. That's what it feels like. Mm-hmm. This is really strange. It's I've got to say that this is probably the best information that we've had in quite some time on the show.
Definitely.
Man, that really, I'm really flattered. I mean, I got that visual when you said it's like flying through space. And I used to always visualize it like ending up on one of those bars on Nebular 13, and you come in and there's all these beings, different kind of beings there. And I always tell myself, man, you got to be prepared for that, man. You got to be ready for that. Because one thing about the DMT that you'll notice is that when you walk, that's what I would get. There's one of the biggest points I can tell people: don't sit there. Get up. And don't get, because there's a certain point where you almost like you draw in completely, like a little cocoon, and then you're just there in your experience. Walk, because then it just does, and you dance. And then you'll see that the entire universe is watching your dance, and you will perform in ways that you never even knew. It's like you got loaded with an entire Tai Chi session. And if someone was to record it, they'd be like, yep, that's just how it's done. He must have been in it for years.
Wow. I would have never thought that. I have this thing that I do. Every time I smoke DMT, I have these motions that I do every time, and it's like preparing my body for liftoff. You know, and part of that is trying to like
weird arm gestures and things like that. You seem to kind of lock yourself into place or something.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to pull into that cocoon, because whenever I get there, I feel like I'm a baby in a dome-shaped playpen.
Yeah, and then but the other state is when you come out, you feel like, I guess for better lack of words, the Messiah. It's something about that. I'm just telling people straight up. I think there's multiple messiahs. I think that Jesus was a cult. It was a cult of the anointed Isu. So there was more than one Jesus. It'd be like going to look for Muhammad back in the day. There was more than one Muhammad. But the reality is that I noticed that when you get up and you walk around, something else happens. It's almost like, because even when you open a door, it feels like that movie where you open the door and all that light shining in. You just don't know what you may encounter. And then you start to, for a minute, really ask yourself the question, you have such a sensitivity of encountering other 3D beings that don't fit into the 5 spectrum, meaning that the 5 spectrum is what we use to judge what we're looking at. So this is why there's nothing that comes by us that we can't recognize. Now, when a creature that is not on 5 walks by us, it's basically called an ET does. We see, oh my goodness, what is that? I've never seen that before. It's never been on TV. And then there's a fear. So this thing is really, really interesting to me, because you see where your next leap is. Because can you be around beings that have another geometry on a physical level? Is the question. But the experience itself is just like the first DMT experience. No one could have ever done as much as there was. No matter how much explaining you got, there was still nothing. You could have explained it. You even kind of were mad that people didn't prep you a little bit more.
Yeah, there's really no preparation you can do.
There isn't. It's been almost a year since we've smoked DMT, and every couple of weeks we go, you know what, let's smoke tonight. And then the jitters take over you, and you're going, well, I don't know. I don't know if I want to go that far right now.
And that's what I like about it so much, is because that's what shows everyone DMT is not a drug.
Right.
See, a lot of people have definitely demonized the DMT because they're like, where I'm at in my spirituality is I believe I don't need anything. Well, first of all, when did we ever not need anything? We're using a lot of stuff, for one. 2, if we're talking herbs, then stop using oregano then. Stop using all of the salt and the pepper. Stop using all of that, because it's in the same classification. So what we see is that I always say disbelievers block their own way. If this has been made available to us, to me, it's perfectly safe. I've seen people transform their lives off of it. I've definitely seen the death of the ego. But what I see for myself is when you get as far in spirituality as individuals such as myself, or those that call themselves adepts, they think almost that they got this thing figured out. And then DMT pushes the bar away.
Well, yeah, that's the ego when you think you have it figured out.
Yep.
Exactly.
When you think you know it all, you don't know anything.
We've had a couple of callers holding for over an hour. I'm not sure if they're just listening or if they want to get something on the broadcast. But if you guys want to call in, 866-841-1065. We've got another jam-packed hour after this, 7 minutes remaining in this segment. But let's go to area code 786 and see, anything on your mind, or are you just listening? Area code 786, going once, going twice. Nope. Let's go to area code 813. Anything on your mind?
Oh, no, I'm just listening.
Listening. All right. Let's go to Kevin in Minnesota. Kevin, anything on your mind?
Hello. Thank you very much for taking my call. Extremely interesting. I think this is another grand slam for you, Chris and Shuri.
Thank you, sir.
Very much.
Enjoying it. One question I have for your guest, and everybody knows I'm of Native American descent except your guest. What can you share with what you have experienced or what you have learned from the indigenous people of North America?
Okay, I mean that's a very great question. The reality is that, well, first of all, let's talk about where all of the Indians come from, if we're going to give it that term. Of course, all the Indians are from India. You could tell that by the hair, but before they got to India, they were still also in Ethiopia. What we find is in Ethiopia, we find the connection of basically the black man and the white man through skin color and through hair through the Dravidians, which of course became David when they removed the R. Or divide, as I say. So what happened with the Dravidians were they decided after they had cultivated the knowledge and the seat of the world through definitely some type of serpentine beings, the Nagas, etc., they began to spread out. And as you see with the dark black hair, that is of a certain oval, I believe it's 8 ether is the classification, you see those people spread throughout the entire earth as if they were the ones that were spreading the actual, what I would say was the seed of enlightenment, or what is inside, which is anything to do with in. So what happens also within the North America regions, because I'm personally also Blackfoot Indian, and if you see in their word Aya Kiniwaki, which is their tribal call, you still see Ya within it. And what Ya means is fire, because Ya, of course, is where we get our word God, because really a G is a Y, and you find many different variations of that, but I won't get into it now. But our word for God is really the word Yod, which means flame or fire. And there was a spreading of worshiping the fire god who's known as R. R is, of course, the original name of the pentagram itself. Is called the R symbol, or the plow sign. So what happened with these particular beings is they began to basically colonize and seed the entire planet with their extraterrestrial consciousness. And what happened in North America is that many of these areas, as you see within the video, What Lies in Plain Sight, or if you see that video, you'll see many of these areas have been lying, for better lack of words, dormant. That after the indigenous people either were slaughtered or moved to Canada, slaughtered to be reborn again, or moved to Canada, once that area became repopulated again, you then had the beginning of this entire prophecy, which is a awakening. See, what the United States, if you've noticed, is much of the ley lines and the sacred places and the deserts and things are highly concentrated with energy. There's a lot of anomalies, a lot of different type of crystals, meteors, and different things that are located in the United States. So we can't deny at all that it is sacred ground. But what is it really? And so when I dig deep into this to finally cut through completely and just say it, it appears that there was a highly serpentine or fish-like nature to the original being that was on this planet. And I can only put this as, you see fish have scales and reptiles have scales, so there's not too big of a difference between them. I guess this will allow us to go just a little bit into how planets like this are really created, which will also let us see a little bit of our indigenous story. basically what you were dealing with Earth before Re penetrated, or Ra, or the straight line. You can also find an example of this within the male's penis penetrating the womb. So before that happened, this planet was entirely water. There was no landmass, but it wasn't the kind of water that you see now. It was actually very similar to the amniotic fluid that is in a woman's sac. It's very fertile and ready to receive a seed, but there is no seed. Now, when the Bible begins, this is how the trickery begins, because it describes Earth as being nothing going on before Elohim arrive, or the L's, or the straight lines. Okay, so that we know that that's a lie, because if life comes out of anything, life had to exist within it. And we find that everywhere, so we can't be tricked in that sense. So it was already alive. So now we begin before the Bible, when there was a conflict, or what was written out as a conflict, but it was really the moving of the land masses. And even we can see this in our reality as the friction that is created when two people begin to make love. So there's there's abusive friction that takes place there. So when that happened for our planet, with the interaction of the rays from the sun, these rays penetrated into the center of our planet, and that's why this ray is known as the core of our Earth. There's even a goddess named Kor. Now, some people argue about whether this is a 5-pointed star or a 7-pointed star, but we find a sigil that has been known to be very powerful, even though I have not used it and do not use sigils. It has a 5-pointed star and a 7-pointed star. Now, the 7-pointed star we know traces to, well, one, Maersk, which is the largest shipping magnet in the world. You see these 7-pointed star trucks go by on the trains all of your life. They're elven kings. Who are, because they know that as the elven star. Who are these beings? Because they call them angels. They run on angles, which are also straight lines. So who are they? Because every one of these indigenous people keep saying they came in contact with them. They were shining. They gave them information. And then they said that they were going to come back. And depending upon what individuals could do with this power that was given to them, because the power was neutral, you saw good and bad things happen. And you saw men fight and hate each other, etc. So again, as we fast forward through our reality, you can start seeing how these energies that I'm speaking of are not male or female. They're both. Because this same 7-pointed star, also called the Elven Star, is a symbol of the 7 sisters of the Pleiades. 7 sisters of the Pleiades are the 7 wombs of this planet, where the 7 people that were birthed here, which is what the seven types of people that were birthed here, came from. Just at least on this platform. I'm not saying this is what exists outside of this construct. I'm just trying to let people understand what all these people that they're calling Illuminati and all that, what they 100% believe in, been able to prove through mathematics, been able to show how it works, and even somehow imprison themselves and us with them into a reality that it's all going on. So we have to solve it. So we just know what we're solving. So in the 7 sisters of the Pleiades, Maya was the most beautiful. This means out of the masculine energies, they wanted Maya first. Now the woman Maya, Ma, M-A, we know who Ma is, Yah. Y-A, we know who Yah is. So you see, it's an androgynous being, even though it seems like it's a female. Now another thing with Adam, Ad means male in Arabic. So you have Ad, Am, and of course, Am is Ma again. So you see, Adam is known to be androgynous. So, and then Eve comes in as the woman, as the creature they're saying is Eve, which is really the moon, because it comes in the evening, is the nighttime sun, is masquerading as the woman. Because the moon is androgynous too. It sometimes is homosexual. And that's why many that are still stuck trying to pass the moon, sometimes in aggression, end up becoming homosexual. Your entire existence here is a trajectory. Your trajectory means everything when you're flying a big craft. So when you leave Earth, you hit the moon first. This is also how the belief systems are even set up in our reality. Christianity is a lunar cult. Then you also see Islam is a lunar cult. There's a moon and there's a pentagram there. This is the moon and Venus. They're very specific, and that's why people have to understand what they're looking at and make the choice. So make the choice to understand what you're looking at and to do what you know you need to do. If you need to walk away, walk away. If you need to go all the way, go all the way. But do something. That's what the end of the book says. How I wish you were one or the other. You're neither hot nor cold. You're only lukewarm, so I'll vomit you out of my mouth, meaning that if you go into either direction aggressively, you'll eventually figure out where your balance is. Mm-hmm. I advise you to use the route of pure energy. So when you're leaving through projection, you go to the moon first, and all the lunar cults attempt to pin you in because they're horn gods. And it's a ghost world. It's basically, that's why the moon is gray. The grays are only ghosts. Projecting them, they can't even get into this reality anymore, by the way, because their frequency can't hold into this reality. And that's what the hum is that people are hearing around the world, that the world's frequency is coming up higher. So in the ghost world, with the ghost god, or the goat god, the horn god, then people can get stuck in that. So when you make it past that, Perseus, you either make a left-hand path, Venusian, or you make a right, solar path, Martian. So pretty much what happens from there is the person either banks right and then goes through Mars and then gets scarred up with Saturn, and then maybe by the time they hit Pluto, they feel like they want to blow up everything, and that's why they're way out there. As they tell you, with plutonium, there's a little bit of plutonium can blow up our whole planet. So Pluto is positioned way out there, way away from the sun, and many are stuck in plutonium states of mind. As I could say, Hitler was stuck in a plutonium state. You bank left to Venus. If you take the Venusian initiation properly, which is actually Christianity, and don't get caught up with Gog and the rest of what's actually in the church, you get a chance to go into the Mercury.
Did you hear that?
Did you hear that?
Yeah, I think it's somebody.
Is it somebody on the line, or?
No, actually, we did a show on exorcisms and demon possession last week. Ever since then, we've been hearing these weird sounds.
I heard it the other day when I was calling a family member.
Through our electronics, cell phones, a Skype, anything.
It's very bizarre and it's very unnerving.
Well, that was just Skype there.
That was Skype.
I hear some feedback.
Yeah.
But I always say, and to tell you the truth, all these beings are looking for a way to transmute. Like there's been an extreme level of disinformation that's led a lot of beings into the wrong path, and they've died in that state.
Yeah.
Like this is what you read in Dr. Baldwin's. Like people have to really read William Baldwin. He's a psychologist and a psychiatrist. His book is called CEVI. It's CEVI, and man, that guy is the truth. He just started noticing certain anomalies when he was using his normal practices of psychiatry and getting people, he's a psychiatrist. He gets a person on the couch, they start talking. Next thing you know, they get comfortable. Next thing you know, they slip into an altered consciousness, and then he's got a open window to what's going on in there. And it talks about, these energies. But see, they don't speak English. That's another thing about the tongues. Like if you notice when people speak tongues, it's like another language. Well, what happens is that they have to be shown a different way. This is where many of the teachers are failing because they're trying to talk to them like regular English. They have to see it. You see, like the only way DNA can correct itself is it has to see the real it has to see the original pattern. And so until people start becoming original, then that's when they really start to, they have these things hanging around. Like my environment is completely free of any energies contrary to the entire mission. They don't even get in radius. And it's because there's things like if you use that, it's on the website, if you use that 528 hertz pattern, which is on the website, the reason it's the truth is because I can confirm it on another level. It's the exact same, I call it the cornucopic field that you see opening up with your third eye. So it corresponds to a higher chakra. And because sound is shape, is color, if you have that shape around, it is a gate for high energy. Not energies like living, conscious, sentient, talk to me. It's just a portal of energy, pure energy. People they've been specifying exactly what kind of energy they want and what kind of friend they want and what they want them to be like, even though they have friends and people around them that that's them. But to be able to go to them, this is where the motivation should come. To be able to go to them, you need to be able to tap into the energy, have it come through you, charge up, and then go around them and let it change them through the emission. It's not even a conversation. It's almost like I think people could have done more in Occupy Wall Street if they had just sat there and said nothing.
Right.
Because that has a whole different kind. You're entering another field, and then that shakes things up. And so this is what we're up to, though. That's where this is where things are now.
Mm-hmm. It's all about the energy that you put out to the people around you. I know people that like to sit in the negative energy, and they make everybody else around them miserable, whereas other people, as soon as they walk in to a room, it seems like the room just lights up. Because
some people thrive off of that negativity, psychic vampires. And I don't think that they know that they're psychic vampires, but some people feel better about themselves or feel better inside by dwelling in that.
Yeah, I mean, in this case, like I said, that's where people got to get really serious about jumping off their body, because what happens is your energy becomes the cure. They can't then drinking it. It's like a vampire drinking its own antidote. Mm-hmm. Like a serious, I really like to keep the conversation on a real serious note, because I know maybe some of this stuff will be listened to later on, a few months later, when things start to really pick up and heat up.
Oh, it will
and
be,
people
for sure.
start seeing a lot more of the spiritual connection, then they can go to this and they can say, okay, this is what I need to do now. But the reality is that there's a lot of stuff that's already been given to us, like high frequencies that penetrate many of these negative energies, but you're already there when you're at the ayahuasca and you're at the DMT, meaning that if you're on those levels, you're already there. The next thing that needs to happen is there has to be a mission now, meaning that there has to be a trajectory. You have to kind of know where you're going, and that's why maps are important. Imagine us all getting in the ship. We get all nice. We pack it all up, and then we start sailing, but we don't have a map. Like, how long does it really last? Like, realistically, we have to know where we're going. And so because there's been somewhat of a haphazard, let's experiment way to getting into other states of consciousness, there hasn't been this, hey, our Earth is really, really suffering. I need to get into this because I need to find a solution for Earth. And then when encountering something, like I say, and can you help my friend, when it doesn't look all right and it's cussing and stuff, you're like, man, look, yeah, I know you're like whatever, you're pissed off or whatever, but I need answers. And then you'll see with whether or not those are projections of the mind or if those are real entities, because there's several locks on the mind. And I'm sure some people, especially on the DMT, have seen when they're going through it, what looks like keyholes with weird shapes on them.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And
that
so
was my
that
first
is
one,
the actual, that's the gates themselves, which you have the passcodes for, but don't know them in physical. Meaning that the physical representation or name or symbol of the gate, you don't have possession of, but you can see yourself going through the gate. It's like a dream that you can't remember. You have to understand how to bring that kind of information back for yourself. In many cases, it's good to start looking at self in the mission to how prepared you are and how equipped you are to go into this if you believe at least 25% of what we're saying is true. Because a lot of people are approaching this, and obviously, based on the last memo, especially from David Icke, they couldn't believe what he's talking about is true because they would be acting a whole different kind of way.
Right.
So we have to look at, like I say, this guy that was a Chinese, he was a Chinese guy that was a motivational speaker, so he spoke in front of millions of people. Their population is way higher than ours. He said, if you don't agree to do it right away, your mind, because of the way it works and how fast it works, has already made up at least 2,000 to 3,000 reasons why it doesn't want to do it. So generally start using that gauge on yourself if you feel like you're moved by the message and it wants to take you to do something. What do you do next? Cleanse. Use the brute force way. The ethereal ways are for ethereal people, meaning that you can feel the more subtle forces when you start getting into the subtle planes, and you can start even reading what's on a doorknob even and who's touched it. But the reality is before that starts, you work with the physical body, you work with the beast, the brute force, and you clean it up. Like on our site, we have these internal cleansing kits that were done by professionals as far as how many herbs and things that are available through nature to cleanse out our body completely. Once that happens, the vibrational frequency changes anyway. Then none of the other low frequency can be around you anyway. See, frequency is so specific that if you change your frequency, the lower frequencies can't be around anyway. It's not even something that you have to work hard on. It just happens. But you have to take the cleanse, because you see there's two forces helping you. You have these external forces, the external planets about to wake up and waking up. If you work from the inside, then you're basically touching the finger, like on the painting, I guess Leonardo da Vinci or Michelangelo had the finger touching God. This means you're meeting yourself halfway, because you are the oversoul. You are God. You are just detached. And so when you make that connection, it connects with all the other subsequent yous. So this is things that people can work on. Even there's ways that if you cannot afford expensive things, stuff like, I'm sure everyone knows about the MMS, powerful alkaline. If you mess with alkalines and acids, like a real alchemist says, bring your alkalines, bring your acids. If you mess with that, then you understand that MMS is the highest alkaline available. When you put small increments in your water, 2 to 3 drops per gallon, it starts to kill and remove pathogens that have been in the body. And it really helps the immune system fight this situation back so you can vibrate higher. When you vibrate higher, everything lays down. All lower dimensions lay down, because you can see anything below you, but you cannot see everything above you. And this is just how we were configured. And that's why most people, when they get ready to come out of the body, they feel a spin. They feel this displacement within themselves, as some even witness the complete transit, which is coming out of the hole that's in the back. So again, we can have another show at some point in time or whatever, but there's a lot of knowledge that is still available on this dimension. There's a lot of things going on. It's very exciting. You can't really narrow it down, because 1 connects to 2, connects to 3. And this is also one major part of what people need to learn. Like, if you're a number 2, 1 is what you were, and 3 is what you're going to become. So you'll find a lot of this knowledge start to blend into itself, where you can't realize who's the reptilian anymore and who's Mars, or was it Mercury that was really Buddha, and it starts to really spin into itself because it's already spinning inside of you. The planets are the chakras, they are the organs. The organs must play harmonic again. They must be in the orchestra or the organic organism. If that does not happen, then one is on timeout in the bubble, the boy in the bubble, they call it. So what happens is that and look out, there's certain movies like, what is it called? Very Loud, Very Clear, or something like this, a movie that just came out, Very Close, Very Loud, and they keep showing these boys like Hugo that are in these weird states to where the reality is reacting to them in a very strange way. They're sending out this program and sending out this wave. What we do also with, we're going to be doing very heavy here, is the synchromysticism is very powerful. Like some of the fathers of synchromysticism, Soundless Dawn, showing people how the movies really connect. Like, we've gotten so deep into that now. We haven't done a movie in a while because things are moving so fast, but you see the octagon initiations. You see all of it play out in front of you, and it's time for us to stop watching and become a part. Because what I also noticed when I started rising through these higher states, and many of us are different, but we're all here to learn the same lesson. It's like a real prison. Different kind of people there with different crimes, but all there to learn the same lesson. When I was going through different fields, I popped through one version of myself, and I was sitting on a throne but slumped over, as if I had lost conscious, and I felt like I was on opiates. And then when I looked up, I saw all of these things in front of me trying to entertain me. And then I noticed that basically what has happened to us is that we stop looking within to understand how to control our inner world so that it controls our outer world. And what we did was, the moment that something stepped up in front of us to entertain us, i.e. a jester, comes in front, we focus on that with one of our eyes, but we have a body full of eyes. Then something else comes up, and it wants to be entertained also. Then we focus another eye on it. Eventually, all our eyes are focused on everything around us, trying to entertain us. And we forgot to be self, because you can't be self in focusing on everything outside of you. So this is what I saw, and I woke up, and I told the beings around me to heal. I used that word, and then everything went back to normal, as if You can even be the most powerful beings, but your entertainment becomes your distraction.
Right.
So what's happening here is grand. It's grander than humanity could ever fathom, but that's how things are anyway. I've been noticing lately, man, we're so young. It's like we're just coming out. I'm even seeing common sense. Common sense to tell you the reason why they keep making the computers faster. First of all, it's just a chip in there. It's just a crystal. But they're making them faster because people can operate on them that fast. Well, one instance, like my new game is, can I operate on DMT? So I get on the computer on DMT. I'm flying across the keys. The processor can't go fast enough. And then at that point, I get a transmission that says, yes, Evan, why do you think they keep making faster processors? But the people who are using these computers are not on Skype and on YouTube and blogging and stuff. The only thing they're doing is mathematical equations that equal shapes, and they're projecting themselves through those shapes. Because there's one website, I can't remember right now, but I will source it. It shows you that what was ultimately discovered in mathematics, the end of all of the confusion and squiggly lines, that they could, through numbers, make the shape of the jump gate. And then anyone with a simple visual technique could project themselves into it because they could take it into their third eye, which makes it 3D. Now, we definitely see 2D because we don't see around the object. And so much of the ideas of the three-dimensional reality is more like 2.5. We haven't really gone into the 3D vision yet. And so this 3D enhancement for us, this triangulation coming out of a dual plane, is all we need. There's no other step after that. Once you leave 1, 2 is only conflict. It's just what it's supposed to be. It's dual. But once 3 is reached, it's just like you were at 1 again. That's why there's only really 3 letters and 3 numbers. And then when there's the 0, which was never supposed to be mentioned and never supposed to be talked about because it meant everything that we don't know, everything outside of what we've experienced, which we always saved a place for. And so this idea or way of being that we want to have it all now so we can make it over with, oh my goodness, it's just begun. Like, how do you make something over that's forever? The best thing that you can do is make it exciting. It's not going to end. Many ships are spinning out of control. The pilots are asleep at the wheel, meaning that because the body is a vehicle, many souls are still inside those vehicles, sleep, not even awake. And the flesh body is along with the mind. These two are like gangsters. They're hanging out, controlling things, and the spirit is still asleep. It's almost like the mind and the body have conspired against the soul to make sure it stays asleep, because they know once the soul awakens, because the soul is fire, once the soul completely awakens, because that's why our bodies stay warm, because we have soul. So when the soul leaves the body gets cold. We call that a dead person. So this soul, if it awakes, it burns off impurities with another kind of fire. So what they're talking about is it's Kundalini, and it removes all fake programs. So if you've never had a real program, you basically lose your memory and go into another existence. And this is how also the Code of the Matrix started, was what we're fighting for here, if we're fighting for anything, is our memories, because that's what makes it all important. Earth is an anchor, it's ground. So that means all of what we've experienced, if we go through a wormhole and the magnetic attraction of that wormhole wipes our auric field like a credit card clean, and we don't have none of our memories, what was the point in all this? So people realized this a long time ago. So they started to learn how to navigate it, not just letting it go and go with the flow. That's cool, but you got to get to a point where you understand how to grab the wheel. Like I said, that's the responsibility. Now, responsibility is power, but look, there's 2 different kind of responsibilities. If you've created something, and actually, I'll use this one first. If you see people in the reality that you really want to help, and you know they need your help, you take that responsibility and you help them. But there's another one. If you see something that you've created, a monster, take the responsibility to be here for it until it becomes a real balanced being again. See, that's why they say, like John Lamb Lash, he's now pulling away from the light, but that was a person that was very powerful. He said, you can learn a lot from the archons, meaning that while we're trying to throw these reptilians and these different beings under the carpet, you can learn a lot from them because they're us in our extreme states. And while we're sitting back lollygagging like none of this is real, there's a real world that we could have entered a long time ago. It's always been available to us. It's just the knowledge of how to enter it through your heart. The heart is the engine, and that's why it's important for us. The physical reality was Ma'at. Ma'at was justice. It means that every time you reincarnate into matter, which is Ma'at, the justice is served, meaning whatever you did, different lifetimes and things, it's going to be here. So Ma'at, the earth, the dark goddess, was responsible through dark matter for rematerializing all the beings into a physical reality to give them another shot. You find this in all the ancient texts. So I'm going to go ahead and take a break because I know there's probably like a break coming up or something like that. I know I've kind of just kept going, but, you know, we're bringing it. So hopefully you got enough about what's going on with the indigenous just from a Dravidian level rather than seeing the Americas as separate and what happened with the Indians there. I will say this in conclusion, and I wanted to say this on the back of the last piece of what I was talking about, but the ancestors always use different kind of things in order to heighten their spiritual awareness. And through the ones who were the deceivers, we'll just give them that term, they knew that. And so they used it as weakness. So what happens with many of the Indians is alcohol became their weakness because Indra, the one who bought the fermented barley to them, bought it as a supplement to the drinks that they were originally drinking, which were like the ayahuasca. The black man and his situation, or the Africans and their situation with the cannabis plant, the cannabis that we are getting in most cases is not organic, but it's nothing like a cannabis plant that would be growing in the jungle for who knows how long and what it would be able to do. So the two can't be confused, but a remnant of it survives within the weed that is passed around during society. So we see that what is the weak point, as they showed you with the 12 tribes of Israel, that each tribe had a weak point, has been identified and has been being used continuously by the controllers to use the Achilles heel of each race in order to keep it from uniting with its other counterparts.
Let me ask you this. You said a lot of the weed that we get isn't organic. Here in Colorado, we're actually able to legally grow our own if we choose to. We don't because it's so cheap to get it from the dispensary. But if we got seeds and grew it completely organic without any pesticides or chemicals or anything, would that come out as organic, or are all of these seeds tainted? Is that what you're getting at?
Well, I mean, just overall, weed is a reference point. So the reference point of the person is going to be highly dependent upon what they generally do while smoking weed, because it activates the other side of the brain. That's why it's called a gateway drug. It is marijuana, but it's Mary, so it is also cannabis, which is related to Anubis. So it has two different sides to it. And I think we've seen people that experiment with both sides of that, from ultra lazy to ultra creative. So I think what happens is that people have to get out of smoking weed in like a leisurely type way without doing anything where they set reference points to where they go into this ingenious state. Also, the body does still need to be just like anything else. The filters have to be clean. So, of course, smoke toxifies a lot more. So it's important for us, especially if we really want to go above and beyond in these altered states that we've already been entering, to get the vehicle prepared. Because here's what I experienced. Once I got jumped off, when you stand up and you keep taking those breaths, your body starts to turn on, but you'll start feeling your organs vibrating, and sometimes they'll hurt. Like in the beginning, some of my organs started to hurt, and I realized, I was like, man, those things haven't been cranked up in so long. I need to get those things in order. And it was really like that. The organs were not in the best shape. So it's easier to look at it like a car, and your alternator and your voltage regulator and all this stuff is, the capacitors are dirty. So you really need to get it cleaned out. And then I guarantee people will go so much further in all of what they're choosing to explore those states.
I took antidepressants and other psychopharmaceuticals for almost 10 years. And when I first started using DMT, I didn't hardly see anything, like at all. I mean, and then whenever I finally did see something, and when I finally did go somewhere, it was in black and white. No color whatsoever. And then finally, as time went on, I started to see more and more and more. Is that how the rest of the population is going to
when the
experience
pharmaceuticals were taken out of the equation.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just to kind of take it from the top, what happens is that, of course, there's really just the mucoid plaque or the layers that are within the colon that actually hold all of these chemicals and these different things as deposits. It's really like our version of strata. And so that's why also when those areas are cleaned out, it comes out like kind of like a long rope of stuff that's just been in there for the longest once it breaks free from the walls.
Right.
So what happens is that there's other glands in the body than the ones that are being mentioned, such as the pituitary and the pineal gland. There's other glands that are not functioning. And so because of the overall calcification of the body. So also what the substances such as the ayahuasca and the DMT do is they get those glands at least, it pokes them a little
pumping
bit so that the person
becomes
more sensitive, where the actual faculty starts to work more.
Right. It gets those muscles going again.
Right. But see, remember, you're still on the what they call it, the early bird bus. The reality is that the planetary energy itself, which functions according to the moon, is going to get stronger and stronger. So it's going to get to a point where it's basically going to come to what they call a boiling point within individuals. And now many people think that this is going to be a negative thing, but they don't realize what actually happened. Now, first of all, our great-grandparents did not have computers. So this means that once it's time for everyone to get the memo, we can literally email it. Meaning that when it's time for everyone to wake up, if there's an authoritative figure or a movement or someone who's already manifested it or whatever, when they're finally able to display themselves, then it's going to be only a short period of time before everyone knows. Versus before, there could be several activated beings and beings that could tell you how to get into the higher levels, etc. But they were excluded to just using the astral plane to get to you. You see what I mean? And
Right.
Now what we're seeing is an entirely different way to enhance the species, because here's another thing. People are very frustrated with the different, I will call them genetic mix-ups that have been going on the planet, meaning that when you actually mix beings together that don't really work out together, it's like adding bleach and ammonia, and then you get the explosive baby. So people have been asking, well, what is going to happen with all those individuals and those kind of beings? And this is where it's taking a lot of, that's why Earth's time cycles and experiences are so drawn out, like this whole awakening for us, where we could have just been told plain things and it would all made sense from there. It's drawn out because there's a lot of, for better lack of words, psychological, psycho-spiritual, psycho-mental work that is having to be done, because what they still say is that whole act of this entering into this planet, the way we are developed, is not a very tried and tested thing. This is not the norm. This was outside of the norm. This was outside of the box. And that's why the box is the macrocosm. They show that. Look at What Lies in Plain Sight, the video, or Secrets in Plain Sight, the video. You see the macrocosm is everything that is bigger than the microcosm, or everything that is bigger than man is the macrocosm. So that is the cube. So where the pentagram exists is actually outside of the cube, or outside of the box. So this is what makes this whole thing for us really creative, but there's always this authoritative box, basically ominous square, looking at us, making sure that we don't get out of control. So we think. You see what I mean? And so that's why when we start to accept the ideas of the box, now look where we're living in boxes, this all really relates. But it's not something that, as they say, with a curve and a straight line, anything can be drawn. And if one thing you notice is you have many people that are ready to go back to the curve. They feel the feminine, they feel the waves of the energy and everything, and they're like, that was the better way. But they still don't get, it's not about better. It's not about good and evil. It's way beyond that. Hopefully you got that in the last memo. If this was just about good and evil, then why are the evil people allowed to keep going and the good people perish? And then why also vice versa of those? So obviously this is not good and evil. This is something else. We call it Earth. Earth is U-R-T-H. In Sumerian means fire. So this is a fire planet with water. Nothing but combustion here. The product of fire and water is steam. Ether, our spirit, our ideas, the idea of us. Have you ever been in the DMT trip and you kind of you lose self-identity?
Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? You
Yeah,
can
yeah.
feel what happens. It's another thing. And so this is what we're talking about. And one thing I like about that is that you always come back. You have a tether to yourself that allows you to reel yourself back in. I don't see why we shouldn't be in this state, but there are some things that we will have to clean up in order for all of humanity to experience it on this kind of level that we're already enjoying now.
Right.
Absolutely fascinating. We've got a few callers on the line, so we'll take your calls, guys, as soon as we get back from the break, when we reconnect to the Oracle stream. But wow, I had so many thoughts as you were saying, and I just kept getting more and more and more and more, and I lost a few of them.
So did I.
So did I, actually. But I think the first key, especially to those who are a little more hesitant to go that far, to go to those astral levels that quickly, is dreaming. In the dream world, you can get a lot of shadow work done. You can, your subconscious is able to kind of goad you in the right direction of where your true self wants you to go. That's at least what I've always noticed.
Yeah, and then people should do themselves a favor and definitely get cleansed because, I mean, I stress it a lot because it's almost like erasing karma. It's the physical representation of erasing even, I mean, just if we talk on a deeper level, like when the two people interact, then generally there's fluids that are transferred sometimes inside of the individual. Though many of that, the essence of that, as they show you how DNA is everywhere, the essence of that still remains. What the plants do is they estringe the system. They basically make it like what you fill a window with squeaky clean in the inside so that you do get a new shot. See, remember, what happened was that we were big in solving problems. So we can solve things from multiple levels because you can affect things from multiple levels. You have a world now that's infecting another world from under the microscope or another level. So just doing things on another level affects things on a higher level. So we have to really, really understand that we can grab the body and get it shaped back up. I put it through boot camp. I talk to it like it's separate. It's always very interesting to start separating your states of consciousness. Not where I'm sure you could talk to yourself inside your mind, but most of us that are already expanding into higher states of consciousness are not operating on a Pentium, meaning one processor. We're operating with, we can do 4 or 5,
quad
6
core.
different things at one time. Exactly. We're sitting on one of those 8 cores. So the reality for us now, and look also, we see the symbolization. This is what I was going to talk about. Also, is that other number 8 in this reality now. You see Windows is going to Windows 8. You see, of course, obviously Apple's occultly related with Venus. It's a bit in Apple, so it's a bit in pentagram. So it's in perfect pentagram. And then people want to know, where's Jobs? Jobs died. Do you think Jobs could die? Jobs is Flynn on Tron. He's already immersed himself into worlds that they're building with the cube of the knowledge that they discovered in Egypt. They're still making matrices, artificial ones, etc. Again, the one who can guide themselves, can see false light and recognize it as false light. Because what happens is the spirit is very similar to an insect. I think that's why they call it insect, because inside it's secular. It's like, I'm just cruising through space. I don't need to be big. So what happens is that in that insect, we have man, I was really going to break something down here, but
No worries. We're back on the Oracle stream, ladies and gentlemen. Do you want to pick it up, or should we go to the callings? 7.
Man, just keep it rolling.
Okay, no problem at all. Let's go to area code 604. 604, what's your name and what's on your mind?
Hi, my name is Diane.
Hi, Diane.
And hi, how's it going?
Going great.
Love your guys' show. Yeah, love your show. I'm curious to know, I've been doing yoga and I'm a martial artist for like 19 years, and I used to smoke weed, and it was, a great part of my practice. And then last year, I started getting panic attacks and totally can't smoke anymore. And I'm just wondering how that plays in, like when you're talking about these different dimensions and being able to access this different place, do you have any thoughts on this? Have you experienced anything like this? I'm just curious.
Okay, to be clear, what you're asking is that have I experienced where there's a complete withdrawal from something that appears to be a habit, and then and then that's it? Is that what you're asking?
Well, it's more like something that used to totally be able to facilitate consciousness, different states of consciousness, and now it's like I can't even go near it. Can't have it at all, and I don't have the desire to. It's not a withdrawal thing. It's that where I went was so scary.
Right.
Just smoking weed, that like my body just like is like, forget about that. You're not going there again. So I'm wondering, is it like an attunement, or have
I definitely heard about this before. I knew a person that was experiencing that from when they would first they had been smoking for quite some time, but then they got off for a while, and then when they started smoking, they went to this would go to this very dark place. They would actually feel as if they were being abused, etc. And I believe that's 100% because remember, all these plants come from particular planets, and Mars may be the origins of marijuana, because in regards to Anubis and the dog-faced gods and cannabis, etc., that still relates a lot to Mars. So what I believe is that the plant has done its work, and that I of course would prefer anything. I would prefer as the highest thing breath. And the only thing that is necessary, though, is to build prana, because prana is like important because it makes you feel that tingly, orgasmic feeling that, of course, has a lot to do with how you see your energy. Like there's a show in particular on this. You may want to email me through the site, but it was a real deeper explanation, a lot longer than what I did earlier about man and woman, but it really explains how we feel about each other and how sometimes our ideas that we're thinking about each other lead to the inactivity of our next level. And it's just so important, though, because after we've been through a lot of experiences, we've braved a lot of things, and we see ourselves sitting on the top of our discipline, especially in comparison to many of the individuals around us. We kind of get an iconoclastic or somewhat of I've already hit my climax and now I'm going down in the other direction way about our entire being. And this, of course, anytime we enter an altered state, it seems to come out and it seems to pervade everything. So this kind of gives more pieces because we need to know what we're doing in there, and we don't need to be, I personally don't believe we need to be in there for ourselves. I think that we really need to start attaching ourselves to different things that we are accomplishing or needing the energy to accomplish that's going to push this reality in the right direction, and then let that be our guiding light, that particular spectrum. Because here's another thing that I did remember what I wanted to say about the insect secular inside thing. Basically, that our spirits are attracted to light. And so when we're in this astral state, at times we can see something and almost get locked in a gaze with it. And, I won't even get into how many multiple levels of things that I've seen that were locked into the gaze, looking right into light objects. But basically what happens for us is that through the reincarnation process, we know what we think we want to see in our next life, and it comes to us as a light. So the spectrum itself of the light and how the light appears either as a turnoff for us or pleasing to us. When it's pleasing to us, we enter into it, and then that enters our next incarnation. So, of course, the first goal is to not be attracted to light to a level where you can't examine whether it's artificial light, meaning an artificial matrix, or womb, surrogate, as it's called, or surrogate, which means serpent. Serpent's gate is what surrogate means. So whether it's a surrogate dimension or whether it's authentic, you see what I mean? Genuine, or they say homegrown. So this is how, again, it's funny because we're talking about stuff that, of course, the world has a telescopic effect to it, like it has a quantum effect to it. But notice how things have been boring a little bit. Like, from all of a sudden, we start to feel our existence is boring. Like, all of a sudden, we feel like maybe we've been doing the same thing over and over. But why didn't you realize that 5, 6, 7 years ago? What's happening now?
So what it really is it is this process of the awakening itself. It's present. It's upon us. I'm here to tell people as an awakened being that had went through, I just believe, the path that I actually chose because I ran the gauntlet. I'm born on October 22nd. It's a master number, so I pretty much had to figure it out for myself. I'm here to tell people that there is a real spiritual thing out there. It's so vast. As much energy as you can take is as much as it has. The beings that are creating are so far ahead and still going, we're catching their trickle down, for better lack of words. If we understand how things work with gravity, how suns are pulling with gravity, it's basically running, and we're trying to catch it. As we get closer to this energy, our soul, our solution, it starts to pull us in at a certain point. That's where many people are. Many people now are working either to get there or already are there. You want to get this to where it's natural, to where you are basically saying the same thing that the other person that's activated next to you is saying, because everyone is in the collective again. We're not seeing ourselves as separate. And so this is what I really have to say about in regards to when your body rejects something, then listen to the body, especially when it comes to an additive. And then because there also is, I would have to know you more. I would have to see more of what's going on with your information, et cetera. But there's a lot of things that even when I'm talking to you, I can always assume what it may be, but until I know you, then it's like I'm telling you certain things, and it could be something you're keeping in your closet. It could be some music that you're listening to, and that's why I tell people that to go through the site a little bit at least to see what are the main keys, but also not to be idle, because what happens is that you should always be working or constantly building inside of you. There's always something to cleanse. There's always something to really do with the body. So notice how, if you can think of all the money that has ever gone through your hands in your life, if you could have invested that money inside of yourself, if you knew that you could do that, would you not have done that? And so now is the time. We talk about investing in gold. I'll invest in gold maybe to turn it on atomic and then ingest it all. But realistically, invest in your body and clean out your body, because it's going to take you to where you need to go. It is your vehicle. But when one of them's down, when you're on a crash-landed physical ship, that's why the body was either looked at as a marvelous vehicle of wonder or a trap. And that's actually what is. A pen is very powerful in the sense that it can travel through space without sustaining damage. You see what I mean? Like, even what they say, that's why the pyramids correspond also to phi and have a lot to do with a pentagram themselves. That's why when you look at it from the top, there's 5 points on the pyramid. But, you just have to understand the mathematics. But what it is it's impenetrable. If you can see it from an energy level, when anything fires upon the pyramid or anything basically tries to destroy the pyramid, it absorbs the energy and uses the energy. So it's also a symbol of how the body or the spirit is created. It absorbs all your experiences, whether they're positive or negative. And that's another thing about how the higher beings look at this. They're not up there crying about our situation, because they know from what we call good or bad, it's still going to equal growth for the soul, because the soul eats this stuff. So it's time for us to really understand that and start eating good food. Like you can be a person just eating on the dimension, or you can be a person who is raw vegan, for better lack of words. So this is how we have to be able to choose on how we're feeding our spirit.
You know what's funny? I went through a period in time from the age of, I would say, about 15 to 23. I was a heavy psychonaut. I mean, I would even go so far as say it was abuse of LSD, ecstasy, anything like that. And I would go to the raves, and I was a rave DJ as well. So I wasn't doing anything spiritual with it. But at that point in time, about 23, something happened. I don't know what it was. And any time I altered my consciousness, even with marijuana, I would get this horrific experience. And so I stopped doing it until about the age of 27, 28. I don't know if I pushed my body too much, if I pushed my mind too much, or if it was just myself just changing. But at about 28, I was able to pick up weed again. Oh, looks like we got the commercials. Let me cut those. But I was able to pick it up again, and it was a completely different experience, and especially with DMT. And then I started using it as a tool to get to places, as opposed to just doing it for recreation.
Exactly, because they say the UFO, which is really which is really our aura or Merkaba or whatever they want to call it. When they, it's funny how they explain. They say when they took apart the UFO, they found out that the alien that was inside of it had to think where it was going to go, and then it went. So, and then they're crazy because they want to make everything spiritual external. So it subjects physicality, so it'll decay. So the idea gets lost. But the reality is that our spiritual field is the UFO. And when we're ready to project, which is any of these altering substances, we have to actually lay out the coordinates and say, this is what I'm going to do. Now, I personally don't believe that weed is in the arena of being able to project you at all in the way that DMT or even ayahuasca can. Weed is more like an introspection in creativity, etc., versus DMT, like it's a jump gate. It's like, it depends. Yeah. I know for a fact also what days you use DMT on in the segment of the year to how we're positioned in the galaxy makes a difference to your trajectory. So it's got a lot of work that still needs to be done on it as far as mapping out on the 360-degree circle exactly how it actually really, what day really projects into certain areas, because there's certain times where you just see certain shapes. And that's the other thing is I don't really go out there just to go out there. And as you were talking about earlier, DMT is really not that kind of party either. You kind of get the jitters when you're about to go anyway, because you're like, okay, that feeling's coming again. But what we work with is really bringing information back from any of this stuff. Like weed, to me, would have no use if individuals could not bring back something intelligent from it being used. And we have to just get really used to that when we're dealing with especially these external substances that do have karmic situations going on with them.
Well, I use cannabis now as more of to put things in perspective. You know, when the 3D world gets a little bit too overwhelming, or when I've got a lot of things going on, I smoke a little bit, and then it helps me put things into perspective and realize, hey, wait a minute, things aren't that bad. There's a lot of problem solving that goes on when I smoke weed. When I smoke DMT, it's you're absolutely right. It's like a jump gate, and it's like, oh, okay, we just crossed the Stargate. Let's try to remember what happens, because it's so intense that sometimes the brain wants to block it out.
Yeah, I mean, you can notice when the mind starts to look in the other direction, it doesn't want to look straight at it.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
It just doesn't want to look at the shape, and it's like, why are you in my face?
Yes.
Yeah.
Anything else?
That's what I was saying about that. People really need to check that Can You Help My Friend, because it's another way of going in. Like you can commandeer DMT. Like the first time DMT will not, of course, it's like it humbles you, because it'll tell you in a short way anything you want. Basically, if you think you're bad, there's always someone better, and I can bring it right out right now, and I can, because I can bring anything out of this field, because you're seeing the field that anything is created. So much later on, man, it's just so many other experiences when you get beyond just your fears of what, like I always say, it's in conjunction with the breathing. And this is why I understand that what these master meditators have done is they've accomplished the DMT state through breathing, because you can feel how the breathing connects in the DMT, but you understand you feel it a lot more. You can even feel when it's going down, meaning the effects of the DMT. You can feel when it's going down through the breathing. But I've also noticed that, basically, in a nutshell, that the individuals from the Eastern teachings were capable of accomplishing it definitely through breathing, because they had risen the energy above the neck.
Right. And
once it gets above there, it's pretty much like you can't stop it anyway. Like in the two tenses, and one through mantra and the other through DMT. And this is the other thing. I was surprised how DMT could cause the same effect as mantra. It really made me start looking at the so-called power of the gods. And this is another thing that is now up for questioning, because how is it that I could get into a higher state of consciousness with DMT than I can with the Tetragrammaton, when that's supposed to be the end-all, finish-all, beginning and ending for the entire dimension?
Right. I want to get to another caller. Diane, anything else on your mind?
No, that's helpful, guys. Thanks a lot.
Okay, great. Thanks for the great call. Let's go to area code 408. What's your name and what's on your mind? Area code 408. We can hear you moving around. There you go. What's up?
What's up, man? Yeah, my name's Creature with the K. I'm a music producer out of Chico in the 530. This is like my sister's phone. But I wanted to ask the question, is being good being neutral? I mean, being good is like being positive, but I'm saying being neutral is all about guiding the light that is your soul into a more relaxing state that would be the mere reflection of energy itself, still, silent, and endless.
I mean, I definitely, I would love to say something about that. You know, they always say the white line in the middle of the road is the wrong place to drive. I believe that we see sometimes our balance as standing in between light and darkness, when really nothing stands still. So if you're standing still, then you're actually dead. The real action is you're actually running left and right, some say even up and down, so fast that it's like if you were standing on a teeter-totter, you would be able to run from one side to the other fast enough back and forth so that both ends never dropped. So you could see again how it's in frequency. When you increase frequency, you're basically going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth so fast that you're remaining balanced. When you start to slow down, that's when the wobble has more effect. And so it's just like what you see with the top. When you start to spin it, when it begins to slow down, it starts to wobble. And so you want to increase the frequency, and that's what this being balanced has to do about it. It means you understand how to use positive and negative. Negative is ground. It's not psychosis and murdering babies and that kind of thing. Those can all be placed in their own categories. So what we have a bad problem with is using one word to define a lot of things. And then knowing how a battery works, don't you need negative in order for the battery? The stronger the ground, the higher the amperage. So right. In that text, negative would not be bad, then would it? So again, using using the same word to explain too many things.
Anything else, caller?
Yeah, man. I just want to say what's up, Chris. What's up, Cherie? I've just been listening to this show for a minute, but just keep doing what you're doing, and
Nice. We appreciate it. Right back at you. Much love to you. Send me some of your music too. Maybe we'll play it on the show.
All right, cool.
All right. Take care. And Seven, we've got a question that somebody asked a couple hours ago, so hopefully they're still tuning in. I know we lose a few listeners because it gets so late in the evening, but they might pick up the archive. Let's see. It says, can you ask Seven what he thinks about the human eye being backwards? The human eye is one of the rare eyes that has a blind spot because the optic nerves are turned towards the pineal gland.
Yeah, I mean, what I've experienced is that the eyes have a tendency to roll up into a certain position, and that seems to access another part of this whole projection unit that's sitting in the top of our forehead and in the center of our brain. So I would say that there's a reflective, what the eyes would probably do is if you saw it is they would focus towards the pineal gland itself, and then when the pineal gland sends this light, it will refract off the person's eye, which each person has an individual light color, like their color of their eyes. If they say those with blue eyes, it's because they're from a certain constellation. They at least revealed enough of that in some of these secret documents, and they also say because they're also adherents to a certain cult, and that's why their eyes are that color. So what it's saying in totality is that even the color of our eyes will affect what we see in our astral plane. It's kind of like where we pop out at. It's so specific. And that's why the retina is used as an individual identification tool, just as the fingerprint. The fingerprint is very similar to the rings in a tree because that's basically the layering of your life. That's how many lives you've been through in order to be at your experience now. And that's how your future can be read through your palm. So you see, there's all these interconnecting things. What's really needed is the real exact information of exactly how it connects in order for people to see this interlinking. But that's really what I have to say about that. Yeah.
Excellent.
I have one more question before we end the show.
Go right ahead.
You mentioned that you were born on a certain day, October 21st, was it?
22nd.
22nd. What do you think about birth charts?
Well, generally the natal chart, how I work astrology, and really I work it with astronomy, because, you know, it's a lot more noble when you say astronomy versus astrology. When you say astrology, they think of Sunday paper. But the reality is that there, again, is a great deal of information within. There's a reason why we're here. So as it says on the movie Hugo, that it's a big clock and everything is a piece to the clock, and there's no extra pieces. So everyone has a part in this. And so what happens is that when you're able to look into your natal chart, which is the time that you were born, the positioning of your stars, you'll see what you need to escape. I always leave, I only believe that these tools are to help us navigate. They're to let us see, to become what I say sometimes is the 13th. You notice how they show you these 12, like the 12 zodiac, and then they leave this hidden one, and they show you this Jesus with the 12 disciples. So it's 12 and then the 1, the 13th. Well, what I believe is really happening is that when you go through the zodiac, the 12, you go through this wheel, you go through all these materialistic experiences and these different animalistic experiences. What you end up arriving at is the conclusion of that, the 13th, for better lack of words, or what they sometimes even call the 5th element. But basically, you make something unique, even though all these experiences may be archetypical. So there may be an Enneagram nature to this entire reality where there's only 9 kinds of people. But once you meet those 9 kinds of people, you become the 10th. So whatever someone wants to pigeonhole you into some particular belief system or some particular level of thinking, always understand when you apply that level of thinking to you, something entirely different is going to come out because of your spiral. That's another thing. The direction, the spiral, the actual tilt of our aura is also within our fingerprint. A lot of people don't understand how that connects, but we put our own spin on it. And so either way, even if it was all generic information, because we're original, it would end up, the result of it would still be original. So again, to roll all this back on itself, what is original? The first state. You see, so it does show you how the height of what we are is still in our beginning. Once we can learn there's no end, then we always remain in the beginning. So the idea of death, or the cult of death, did sweep our world. The cults of fire that burn and consume things to ash did sweep our world. As they say, man and woman were offered up, but they live. Meaning that out of all the things that have ever been killed, man and woman are still alive. So it shows you there's a deeper connection in what we are. There's just a big time rehabilitation going on. And then many people are already doing it, entering into higher states of consciousness and making their place there amongst the universe. And the innerverse, which is the key too. Your innerverse is the most spectacular place because that's where you're going in the DMT. That's
guys,
another thing for the newsflash.
We're running out of time on Oracle. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll keep it going a few more minutes on stream number 2. Stay tuned for Santos Bonacci live right after this. Oh, kiss the one you love right now because you never know when the last time is going to be.
Hey, guys.
All right. Man, that was an incredible show.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think
you're welcome back.
Hours,
you're welcome back anytime.
Anytime,
yeah,
dude.
Yeah.
Oh man,
so,
we just got started.
I know.
You know,
but no, I like that. It's a lot of information was conveyed, and I'm liking that people will be able to go through that and get some. It'll be a little bit for everyone in there, and then hopefully next time I can get a chance to get back online and be a lot more cohesive. I still have much study to do myself. I'm always studying, and I just come in light of some very, very powerful information, and I really, really want to get fluid with it. And then I would really like to come back and share it so that we can compress a lot of this information and really show people what it's about.
Absolutely. We're still going on stream number 2. So is there anything you want to leave the audience with?
Well, just wholeness versus pieces. Like, people have to understand there's a lot in these words, and it means a lot because we project these words with all of our, with a lot of intention. We project the UFO. So it's important to at least make a conscious effort of, I say good day instead of good morning. Morning means to be sad, or it means darkness. So there's a lot of different things that we can explore and educate ourselves with that are really powerful. So I advise people to check into some of those groups, see what the cream information is there, and find out what their interest is. And also, the groups are set up so people can contribute. Bring the cream, meaning that bring the best that you found out of 5 or 6 years of your study, because you'll see everyone else is doing that. So it kind of sets the bar for us not wasting each other's time. And, some people just saturate the forums and blogs and say, hey, I'm here, basically. But this is the real thing. We remove content that is not cohesive. We're actually going through a major overhaul. And I just invite people to get in on this because it's something that you should do early, meaning that you don't have to wait to the 2012. You don't have to wait to Ascension. You don't have to wait to the Rapture or any of that to get into this experience. Also, I would like to say that I do recommend the ayahuasca personally for people who are considering whether they should try ayahuasca or DMT. And because a lot of cleansing, like I always tell people, man, do yourself a favor. This spiritual stuff is still not a game. Like there's a lot of people and beings and different kind of things laying dormant within inside of many of these individuals. And so it's important to purge and to really work on cleansing. And that's almost like the adept. The adept knows what they should be, knows what they're going to be experiencing, meaning they have a hint that they're going to be experiencing something life-changing and miraculous, and they know that's going to happen, so they prepare themselves properly. And the best way to do that is, again, to go into the body to cleanse out that stuff on that level, and then it'll also work in conjunction with the mind. And go in for your friend, meaning go in for the people that you see that are suffering and that need you. Because the real role of the strong was to uphold the weak until they gained strength. And for us all that are children also, there's a lot of children of these larger, grander beings that have done different things throughout the galaxy. And for those that find themselves as a resonator, meaning that you can find every single identification that you seem to be some kind of God and you know it, those individuals need to understand that their purpose for being here is to correct many other things, to correct the wobble of our ancestors and their passion. The last thing I would like to say is to understand what magic completely is from the magus, meaning there's a lot of people that are coming forth that you have to be leery of that are talking about magic and Goetia and evoking entities. I'll tell you the sum up, sum all for that. In conclusion, what we found is that many of these beings from the Kabbalah they have their animal energies, their elementals. They're very powerful, but they have a different kind of will, so they can be hypnotized. Now, when I'm saying this, I'm also speaking of even some levels of what humanity has been debased into, which is that they can be hypnotized or mesmerized by cheap charms. Now, charms are symbols that are shown to entities, i.e. sigils or talismans, and it freezes the entity in its, what it would normally be coming to do is whatever its elemental power is to you. And then the seal freezes it and then allows you to recommand it to go and do it to something else. So this, of course, is very dangerous stuff. The conclusion of this is, again, is that these beings need to be transmuted, so they should not be really played with. But that's where magic really consists of now, is a hypnosis that is done on an archon or an ancient being, so that the magician, dark magician, knows how to do this to these other beings, and that's how they're using them. So I think that that's a very important key for people to have, so that they understand the sum up of what Goetia, evocation, and things are really about, and where those beings really come from.
Very well said. And your website's one more time.
The website is www.resistance2010.com. If it's easier for you, you can go to www.astroquest.com, and all those get to the same place. And so that's where we're at. And, of course, we have a radio show. We're doing this thing we're calling Weekly Reader now. It's basically like every other week we have like a really, really good book that we definitely got permissions on, and then we let the text-to-speech that we have a really good one, we let it read it. And this is just stuff that we know people need to get in their system, but they may not have the time to sit down and read, or may get really sleepy while they're reading. So that'll help them out a lot to get this information in.
Excellent. You've been an absolutely fascinating guest. We really appreciate your time this evening.
Oh, man, I appreciate you two both. I mean, it was very fun for me. Like, we went everywhere. We did it all. We got a T-shirt.
Definitely.
And you're a very positive guest, and we like that. We need
we're always optimists.
Yeah, yes. Exactly. We need more of that on Truth Frequency. So